The Sorcerer, The Path to Transcendence starting from Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Transformation. The crowd around them gradually thinned out, and as they continued forward, the crowds dwindled until they finally entered a tunnel. Faint lights flickered on the walls, casting shaky shadows. Weiss could clearly sense they were continuing downwards. However, Weiss remained calm and composed. During his interactions with Anya, he hadn't sensed any malice from her. Moreover, with his abilities, even if there were a trap ahead, he was confident he could escape unscathed. However, Weiss still had a lingering question: why had Anya invited him? As if sensing his doubt, Anya tilted her head slightly, looking at Weiss and saying, "You're on a spaceship that only the royal family of Asgard is allowed to board." Hearing this, Weiss suddenly understood. So that's how it is. The last shred of doubt in his mind was dispelled. A few minutes later, they finally reached their destination. Anya paused, raised her chin slightly, and said, "Welcome to the real black market." The environment here was completely different from the black market on the surface. The environment here is far superior to that on the surface. It's spacious, bright, and beautifully decorated. Soft carpets carpet the floors, exquisite artworks adorn the walls, and the entire space exudes an air of luxury. Furthermore, there's a great deal more order here. Unlike the chaotic black market on the surface, the people here seem to abide by the rules, and transactions and activities are orderly. Not only are there interstellar pirates and raiders, those who make their livings through violence and plunder in the universe, but there are also officials, nobles, and even the rulers of some planets. They move discreetly among the crowds, or conduct secret transactions in luxurious private rooms. There are casinos here, where people splash their wealth and luck around at the glittering, multicolored tables. There are red light districts, where the seductive lights and ambiguous atmosphere transport one to another world. Here, all sorts of shops, forbidden outside, peddle a variety of forbidden goods and services. Rather than a black market, it's more like the galaxy's largest den of illicit goods. This was a place where civilized people could vent their inner desires and pressures, enjoying a thrill and pleasure unavailable in normal society. Weiss gazed upon the galaxy's greatest den of vengeance without much emotion. He was accustomed to it. He believed that no matter how just and free some civilization claimed to be, as long as classes existed and the gap between the rich and the poor persisted, such things were inevitable. In every civilization, the elite always had different desires to satisfy, and these kinds of places emerged as a response. However, it had to be admitted that there were indeed many good things here. The items here were several notches higher than those on the surface. There were even Nova Corps battleships for sale. Weiss remembered that the owner of the Void was the Collector, a mysterious figure who enjoyed collecting rare and precious items from across the universe. Without a doubt, he was the owner of this black market. The Collector controlled the Void with his unique taste and immense wealth. Weiss's goal in this black market was clear: to obtain all sorts of rare materials. After searching for a while, Weiss finally made some purchases. It had to be said that the prices here were indeed much cheaper than in regular markets. Items that would have cost a fortune in the regular market could be found here at relatively low prices. With each transaction, Weiss's account was completely depleted. Anya, watching Weiss's lavish shopping, was delighted. Her face was filled with joy. She earned a commission from the customers she brought in, and Weiss's purchases alone were worth her annual income. Anya sighed to herself, "I was right. He's a big spender." Weiss circled the special area again, searching for more valuable items. However, after a careful inspection, he found nothing worth buying. Returning, Weiss's gaze fell on the mountain of supplies. Gold, magic crystals, black gold, and other rare materials were all on display. "Time for a proper renovation," Weiss said, surveying the space he had created. After settling Zondi, Matau Korea, and Matau Sakura, Weiss slowly floated into the air. With a flick of his mind, space began to expand at an astonishing rate, like a giant awakening, its body continuously stretching. The land seemed to come alive, spreading madly in all directions, like an endless ocean expanding. With a slight wave of his hand, mountains began to rise like mushrooms after rain. These peaks varied in shape. Some were steep and precipitous, like swords piercing the sky, others were rounded and gentle, like the gentle embrace of nature, evoking a sense of tranquility and peace. Each peak possessed a unique aura and charm, and together they formed a magnificent landscape painting. The earth began to stir again, as if a giant living being were breathing. Soon, 4 rivers magically appeared, their waters flowing endlessly within. Each of these rivers flowed in a different direction, like the blood vessels of this dimension, bringing life and vitality to the land. Weiss cast handfuls of seeds from the air and chanted a mysterious incantation. Plants grew at a visible rate. Tender green leaves poked their heads from the soil, like curious children exploring a new world. Soon, forests sprang up from the ground. Tall trees reached the sky, their dense branches intertwined to form a sea of green. Then, Weiss began to shape the landscape. His eyes gleamed with wisdom, and his hands danced in the air, like a great artist creating a magnificent painting. Glaciers gradually formed under his will, the white ice and snow like shimmering gems, emitting a cold and pure aura. Huge blocks of ice piled together to form majestic icebergs. Basins also slowly emerged under his magic, the concave terrain resembling giant bowls. The desert was a golden expanse, its sand dunes rolling like waves. A strong wind howled across the desert, stirring up clouds of dust. Chapter 252 Fulfilling the Promise. Weiss used magic to constantly transform this space, altering the topography and weather. He could summon a gentle drizzle to nourish the earth. He could conjure violent storms, showcasing the majesty of nature. He could also cause a dazzling rainbow to appear in the sky. Under his magic, this space became increasingly vibrant. The carefully prepared sun and moon slowly ascended into the sky, like 2 dazzling pearls, illuminating this newly created magical space. The sun radiated a warm and dazzling light, powered by the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone continuously supplied the sun, making its light as fiery and bright as that of a real sun. The moon, on the other hand, was much simpler. It didn't require the same powerful energy source as the sun, it simply needed to reflect the sun's energy. Its surface was as smooth as a mirror, perfectly reflecting the sun's light, casting a soft moonlight over the space. As the sun and moon slowly rotated through the sky, this space experienced the alternation of day and night. However, compared to the real world, this world is like the difference between an adult and a baby. It's a flat surface, not a sphere, and its area is only about 100 square kilometers. Yet, despite this, it's filled with limitless potential and possibilities. Here, Weiss can unleash his creativity to create a unique world of his own. However, there's still one final step. With a flick of his mind, the mountains of gold, magic crystals, black gold, and other rare materials began to slowly fuse together. During this fusion, a slight resistance was palpable. These rare materials, each possessing unique properties and powers, were reluctant to merge easily. However, after witnessing the roots, Weiss gained a deeper understanding of magic and magical power. With his immense willpower and magical abilities, he forcibly fused these rare materials together. Under Weiss's precise control, a 9-story black wizard tower rose from the ground. Combining various magical materials, the tower's defensive power was undeniable. Each level of the tower was intricately carved with magical runes and patterns, imbued with powerful magical powers capable of withstanding all attacks. However, while the tower had begun to take shape, many details remained to be refined. Weiss needed to devote more time and effort to perfecting it. He wanted it to become a landmark of this dimension, a symbol of his magical power. Over the next few days, Weiss immersed himself in meticulously crafting this world. Like a skilled craftsman, he meticulously crafted the topography, making each mountain more majestic and each river more winding. He ensured that water flowed smoothly throughout the land, nourishing all life. He sometimes hovered in the air, surveying the world and examining his masterpiece, and sometimes descended to the ground, personally adjusting every detail, as if painting a magnificent and exquisite painting. As Weiss carefully placed the reality stone on the Mage Tower's core control console, the entire structure instantly began to tremble. The reality stone's immense power surged like a surging tide, impacting every inch of the tower. The tower swayed and emanated a deep rumble, as if it were bearing the brunt of a massive storm. Weiss watched nervously, his heart filled with worry. He knew the power of the reality stone was immense and not easily withstood. If the tower couldn't withstand this force, all his previous efforts would be in vain. However, Weiss's tower withstood the powerful impact. Over time, the trembling gradually subsided, and eventually calm returned. Weiss breathed a sigh of relief, A heavy weight finally lifted from his heart. He gazed at the calmed reality stone, feeling a surge of emotion. These precious materials had not been wasted, they had successfully withstood the power of the reality stone. Weiss could control the reality stone through the mage tower, greatly enhancing his power. Now all he had to do was fulfill his promise. Matao Korea held Matao Sakura's small hand tightly, his eyes filled with concern and worry. His voice trembled slightly as he asked, "Is everything really going to be alright?" His gaze flickered between Weiss and Matao Sakura, his heart surging with anxiety. "Don't worry, I won't act unless I'm absolutely sure." Weiss's face shone with confidence, giving off an air of unwavering reliability. Matao Sakura also smiled brightly. She had been acting more like a normal child lately, becoming more lively. "Just stand here." Weiss gently led Matao Sakura to the center of a magic circle. "Relax, it won't hurt." Weiss's voice was like a gentle breeze, soothing Matao Sakura's nervous heart. "Yes." Matao Sakura nodded obediently. The magic circle glowed faintly, like twinkling stars in the night sky. Matao Sakura slowly floated up, her body supported by an invisible force. Her eyes slowly closed, and she fell into deep sleep. Several silver threads quietly penetrated Sakura Matao's body through her 7 orifices. Like nimble little snakes, these threads weaved through her body. Sakura's body instinctively trembled, instinctively resisting this unfamiliar invasion. But her consciousness had fallen asleep, unable to sense her body's reactions. Weiss concentrated on using these silver threads to examine Sakura's condition. Within her, a vast number of crest worms infested her body. These crest worms, like parasites, were spreading unchecked. The nerves of the crest worms entwined her body like a dense spider web, straggling Sakura's life. Fortunately, Sakura had been taking Weiss's potion, which had stunted the crest worms. A single silver thread split into hundreds, and upon contact with a crest worm, they instantly shattered it. Like sharp scalpels, these threads continuously cleared the crest worms from Matao's body, precisely severing each one, leaving no corner untouched. 10 minutes later, Matao Sakura's body fell gently to the ground like a feather, her face still calm and serene. Chapter 253 Reward. A relieved smile crossed Weiss's face. Matao Korea excitedly ran forward and hugged Matao Sakura tightly, tears welling up in his eyes. A huge weight had finally fallen from his heart, and he looked at Weiss gratefully, unsure how to express his gratitude. Matao Sakura slowly opened her eyes, her gaze filled with confusion. But soon, a bright smile appeared on her face. She felt her body lighten and free, knowing that she had finally escaped the torment of the crested bugs. Matao Sakura hugged Matao Korea tightly, her small body nestled tightly in his arms. She knew that it had always been Matao Korea who had silently protected her. In those dark days, it was Matao Korea's care that was like warm sunshine, illuminating her world. Her heart was filled with gratitude and dependence, and this hug at this moment was her most sincere expression of her feelings for Matao Korea. "It's not time to be happy yet." Weiss's words were like a bucket of cold water, instantly interrupting their warm moment. A sense of unease welled up in Matao Korea's heart. He asked nervously, "Is there anything else wrong with Sakura?" His hands tightly gripped Matao Sakura's shoulders, fearing she would be hurt again. Weiss shook his head and said slowly, "You're the one with the problem." Matao Korea fell silent. He knew the state of his body. It was riddled with holes, eroded beyond recognition. He could feel his life draining away. "By the way," Weiss said, throwing Matao Korea into the magic circle. Matao Korea wanted to refuse. He opened his mouth to say something, but his eyelids grew heavy and his consciousness began to fade. Weiss followed his instructions, clearing the crest worms from Matao Korea's body. Matao Korea had many more crest worms, and there was also a being similar to Bug King. This Bug King was hidden deep within Matao Korea's body. Weiss carefully manipulated the silver thread, and after half an hour, he finally cleared the crest worms from Matao Korea's body. However, the worms within Matao Korea's body weren't his biggest problem. When Matao Korea regained consciousness, Weiss tossed him a potion and said calmly, "Drink it." Matao Korea took it without hesitation and gulped it down. He knew Weiss wouldn't harm him. "It can temporarily keep you alive," but Weiss left the next sentence unfinished. Matao Korea and Matao Sakura understood the meaning. They knew it was only a temporary relief. Matao Korea's condition remained grave. Matao Sakura looked at Weiss with tears in her eyes filled with pleading. "Don't look at me." Weiss shrugged, helpless. This guy has no desire to live. There was a hint of resignation in his words. He waved his hand, saying, "Talk it over among yourselves, then come back to me." With that, he turned and left, leaving Matao Korea and Matao Sakura alone. Weiss slowly walked to the library. Neatly arranged here were the magical tomes he had acquired through his adventures in various worlds. Some had yellowed pages, others were pristine. Each tome bore a unique binding and markings, instantly recognizing its preciousness and exceptionality. These tomes were the treasures Wes had accumulated over his long career of adventure, containing a wealth of wondrous magical lore. But this time, he wasn't here to read. He walked to a comfortable chair in the center of the library, slowly sat down, and then took out a pen and paper and began writing furiously. He needed to organize the knowledge in his mind, especially after witnessing the source, leaving so much information undigested. He pondered as he wrote, each word and sentence reflecting his profound understanding and insight. Complex magical theories, mysterious runes, and powerful spells unfolded before his pen. He immersed himself in a sea of knowledge, constantly digesting and absorbing it. With the aid of the Mind Stone, Wes not only multitasked, but his efficiency increased exponentially. His thoughts raced with lightning speed, handling multiple problems simultaneously. He could recall the secrets of the root, organize the knowledge in the magical books, and ponder how to apply this knowledge in practice. Several days passed, and Weiss remained in the library. At his current level of strength, sleep was no longer necessary. His spirits remained high. He wrote relentlessly, notebook after notebook emerging from his pen. Every page was filled with his wisdom and painstaking effort. When the table was no longer full, Weiss finally put down his pen with satisfaction, exhaled a long breath, and a satisfied smile graced his face. His mind relaxed, and a feeling of joy washed over him. His wizard level had reached 7th. This marked a new level of magical prowess. All my efforts have paid off, Weiss said with a look of relief as he left the library. By then, Matao Korea was already waiting quietly at the door. His figure, in the soft light, looked a little lonely, yet determined. "Can you take us back to Fuyuki City?" Matao Korea's voice broke the momentary silence. "You've made your decision." Matao Korea nodded gravely, his tone firm. "I'm going to send Sakura back to her mother. It's always inconvenient for a grown man like me to take her with me." His eyes revealed a deep concern and reluctance for Matao Sakura. "What about you?" Weiss's gaze deepened, as if he wanted to see into Matao Korea's innermost thoughts. Matao Korea smiled, but said nothing. But that smile held an endless sense of vicissitude and helplessness. Weiss knew that his heart was dead. The pain and struggle of the past had now turned to dust. He was simply fulfilling his final duty. "I'm already satisfied to be able to protect Sakura." Matao Korea's voice was low and hoarse. Everyone pursues different things, and Weiss respected his choice. After sending the two back to Fuyuki City, Weiss didn't stay, but immediately returned to the void. Shocking news spread like wildfire throughout the void. The collector had issued an extremely tempting reward, targeting the cosmic spirit orb. This news was like a huge rock thrown into a calm lake, instantly stirring up thousands of waves. Chapter 254 Guardians of the Galaxy. Collectors are renowned for their passionate pursuit of rare items and their immense wealth. This time, the bounty offered is staggeringly high, a sum that would drive all interstellar pirates mad with desire. In the void, countless greedy eyes were drawn to the bounty. Like sharks drawn to the scent of blood, ships of various shapes and menacing oars left the void and sailed into the vast universe in search of the cosmic orb. The owners of these ships hailed from diverse planets and races. Some were ruthless pirates, some were cunning and resourceful adventurers, and some were desperate criminals driven by wealth at any cost. Carrying their own ambitions and desires, they traversed the universe, pursuing any clue that might lead to the cosmic orb. Weiss stood quietly in a corner of the void, gazing deeply into the distance. He knew the story had begun. Star-Lord would soon arrive, bearing the Power Stone, imbued with the boundless power. The arrival of that cynical yet fearless cosmic wanderer was sure to unleash a terrifying storm. Weiss stood quietly in the void, his expression impassive, yet a glimmer of anticipation welled up within him. He patiently awaited Star-Lord's arrival. Time slipped by quietly, and before long, Star-Lord and his men had unleashed a shattering chaos in the void. Damn greenskins, hand over the cosmic orb. Rocket, a raccoon, wielding an energy gun, his eyes blazing with fury, fired relentlessly at the green-skinned woman, Gamora. The energy bullets streaked through the air with dazzling streaks of light. Gamora was agile, like a nimble cheetah, darting through the hail of bullets with ease. No matter how Rocket aimed, she always managed to dodge the deadly blows. "You have no idea what this thing is," Gamora shouted as she dodged the attacks. "I am Groot, a 3-meter-tall tree-like creature." Groot grinned innocently, oblivious to the chaos around him. "Idiot," Rocket scolded. Catch her. Rocket's goal was clear, to sell the orb for a high price. However, just as they were about to close the deal, Gamora, a woman, unexpectedly snatched the orb away. Groot, obedient to Rocket's command, swiftly extended his arms, wrapping around Gamora like two nimble pythons. Though her hands were restrained, Gamora struggled relentlessly, trying to break free from Groot's grasp. "Let me go. Staying here will only attract Thanos," Gamora cried anxiously, knowing full well how formidable Thanos could be. "If you were to be drawn in, the consequences would be disastrous." "I don't care about Thanos," Rocket said firmly, pointing his gun at Gamora. "I only care about money." Biu. Just then, a masked figure appeared, wielding twin pistols, firing continuously at Rocket and Groot from midair. It was Star-Lord. Groot quickly formed a shield to block Star-Lord's attacks. Gamora seized the opportunity to break free and ran. "Thank you," Gamora said with a thank you before quickly departing. "You're welcome, but you have to leave your stuff behind." Although Star-Lord had his eye on Gamora, money was more important. "Asshole," Rocket angrily retaliated. The four of them instantly engaged in a fight, their energy blasts woven into a dazzling web of light. The Guardians of the Galaxy hadn't yet been formed, they had all come together for various reasons, so clashes over ideologies were inevitable. "Haha, a bunch of idiots," Drax observed from the sidelines. However, when hit by a stray bullet, he angrily joined the fray. "Capture them. The Collector has issued a bounty." Several Reaver teams surrounded the five like hungry wolves. Furthermore, they were joined by the Void Guardians, each well-equipped and fiercely armed. Forced to temporarily put aside their differences and unite against the enemy, their abilities complemented each other perfectly. Rocket provided powerful firepower, his energy gun continuously blasting out deadly energy blasts, keeping the enemy at bay. Gamora was a ghostly assassin, nimble and darting between foes, delivering unexpected and devastating blows. Groot excelled at both defense and control, weaving a solid shield from his body to protect his teammates and using his long arms to entangle foes and restrict their movement. Drax, with his thick skin and immense strength, charged into the enemy horde like a ferocious beast, brandishing his massive fists and sending foes reeling. Star-Lord, a brilliant marksman and strategist, mastered various strategic maneuvers and calmly commanded the battle, becoming the core of the five. The five of them, united, had actually beaten hundreds of men back. "Wow," Star-Lord exclaimed. "This feels amazing. We should form a team." The other four also felt their rapport during the battle. They worked in perfect harmony, as if they had done so countless times before. This rapport made them incredibly comfortable in battle, and it also made them consider whether they should truly form a team. More and more raiders and space pirates, like sharks scenting blood, rushed towards them from all directions. Some piloted bizarre spaceships, some rode ferocious cosmic beasts, their eyes gleaming with greed and fanaticism. Star-Lord and his five companions were indeed formidable, demonstrating extraordinary strength and courage in battle. However, the people of the Void were no pushovers, they lived on the edge of a knife. Having weathered countless life-or-death battles, they were ruthless and experienced. Furthermore, the bounty for capturing Star-Lord and his five companions in the cosmic orb was staggeringly high, enough to sustain them for several lifetimes. This vast fortune acted like a colossal bait, forcing them to recklessly charge at Star-Lord and his four companions. Wave after wave of enemies surged forward like a tide. Some wielded energy weapons, firing frantically, others brandished sharp weapons in close combat, and still others unleashed a dazzling array of bizarre energy attacks. Though Star-Lord and his five companions fought valiantly, their strength quickly drained, and they began to show signs of failing. Their movements became sluggish, their breathing rapid. Sweat soaked their clothes, exhaustion and pain began to consume them. Finally, they were surrounded by hundreds, trapped in a desperate situation. They stood back to back, vigilantly watching the enemies around them, weapons tightly gripped, ready for a final stand. Just then, the sounds of whoosh and whoosh pierced the sky, and hundreds of warships appeared. These warships varied in shape, some as massive as behemoths, others small and nimble. Their muzzles flashed, and they began unleashing a barrage of fire. Both Star-Lord and the Reaver were within range. Powerful firepower rained down like a torrential downpour, leaving the ground cratered and pitted. Everyone was caught off guard by the sudden turn of events. Chapter 255 The Accuser. It's the Kree army, someone shouted in terror, their voice filled with shock and unease. Everyone's eyes turned to the massive spaceships in the sky. They shone with a dark metallic sheen, their lines sturdy and powerful. The Kree symbol was engraved on their hulls. A deep fear welled up in the hearts of the Marauders, for they knew the Kree's character well. The Kree were physically strong, and every Kree warrior possessed astonishing physical fitness and combat prowess. The Kree revered the power of force, and in their culture, fighting was the highest honor. They valued honor and would defend it at any cost. The Kree were often involved in conflict and war with other races. Throughout their long history, they waged a war with the Skrulls that lasted for thousands of years. The two sides engaged in a fierce struggle for control of the universe. This war was filled with blood and brutality, and countless lives were lost. The Kree had a poor reputation in the universe. They were extremely aggressive, bringing destruction and disaster wherever they went. Especially after being recruited by Thanos, the Kree became a sharp weapon in his wield. Under his command, they waged wars across the land, serving his ambitions. Their actions sparked strong resentment and resistance from other races. Furthermore, this time, the one who arrived was Ronan the Accuser, the supreme commander of the Kree. His reputation was known throughout the universe, and he was feared by everyone. The orb is down there. Ronan's tall and burly figure stood like an unshakable mountain, his voice deep and commanding, seemingly piercing the soul. He was clad in ornate black and silver armor, covered in intricate patterns and mysterious runes, which occasionally shimmered with an eerie glow in the light. Yes, his lieutenant replied respectfully. He knew that the void was the Collector's domain, but Ronan ignored it. In his view, the Collector was just a weakling obsessed with collecting rare treasures, no match for the mighty Kree Empire. Descend, Ronan commanded, his voice brimming with unquestionable authority. Yes, his lieutenant immediately relayed the order, and a portion of the Kree's spacecraft began to slowly descend. As the spacecraft touched down, the hatches opened, and countless Kree emerged like a tide, stepping onto the void. Each one of them was well equipped, their eyes filled with cold determination. As soon as they stepped onto the void, the Kree launched an indiscriminate attack, attacking any living thing without hesitation. Their weapons unleashed powerful energy beams, enveloping everything around them in a blanket of devastation. The Kree's assault forced the Marauders, space pirates, and Void Guards to unite in a counterattack. Each capitalized on their respective strengths, engaging the Kree in a fierce battle. The entire Void became a battlefield, thick with smoke and flames. The Kree, with their immense strength and superior equipment, held a commanding advantage. Their attacks, like a raging storm, proved too much for the enemy to withstand. Ronan personally led the search for the cosmic orb. Why would Ronan know about this place? Gamora's heart was filled with confusion. She couldn't understand why the Kree had gotten the message. Her eyes were filled with wariness and unease, her hands tightly gripping her weapons. Star-Lord and Rocket fired relentlessly, their weapons blasting out beams of energy, pushing back wave after wave of Kree. Star-Lord was filled with nervousness and anxiety. He knew the Kree were formidable. If they caught him, the consequences would be disastrous. Who knows? The important thing now is getting out of here, Star-Lord shouted as he fired. A hint of helplessness and urgency laced his voice. He knew that at this moment, the only way to save his life was to leave as quickly as possible. Ronan's after the Tesseract, will he pay? Star-Lord's mindset was always peculiar. Even in such a tense moment, he was still thinking about money. Gamora rolled her eyes at Star-Lord, frustrated by his money-grubbing nature. Damn it. We need to find a way out. Rocket, hearing there was no money to be had, gave up. His small eyes gleamed with anger as he shouted, "Eat shit, Kree, target found, coordinates." Ronan, having received the coordinates, immediately led his men there. Seeing Gamora attack his own men, Ronan's face flickered with a sneer. You betrayed Thanos. Gamora remained silent in the face of Ronan's accusation. She knew her choice was the right one. She would no longer work for Thanos, she would fight for her freedom and justice. Ronan's lip curled. He had already been unhappy with Gamora for spying on him, and now that he had a legitimate reason, he wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. He raised his hammer and slammed it down on the ground. Bang! With a resounding bang, the ground gave way, and the blast sent those nearby flying. Those further away lost their footing and fell. Before they could react, Ronan was there like lightning. The hammer crashed down on Gamora with a thunderous roar, its sheer force terrifying. Bang! A dull boom echoed across the battlefield like thunder. The intense sound waves impacted everyone's eardrums, sending shockwaves through their hearts. Ronan's face was filled with astonishment, his cold eyes fixed on Drax, who had blocked his attack. Ronan had struck without holding back, believing that this blow would be unstoppable and certain to kill Gamora. However, the massive, red-headed figure before him possessed strength comparable to his own. Surprise welled up in Ronan, and he narrowed his eyes slightly, sizing Drax up and down. "Who are you?" Ronan's voice was deep and commanding, carrying a strong sense of oppression. His eyes were filled with confusion and wariness, forcing him to take this sudden appearance seriously. "Where is Thanos? Why isn't he here?" Drax's eyes were red with anger and hatred. His homeworld had been brutally destroyed by Thanos, and his wife and daughter had perished in the catastrophe. Since then, his only desire was revenge. The simple-minded Drax originally thought that sending the coordinates of the cosmic orb would attract Thanos. He longed to confront Thanos head-on and avenge his family. However, he did not expect that the Kree would come. Chapter 256 Collector. "Asshole, it's you." Gamora suddenly realized that it was Drax who had attracted the Kree. Her eyes were filled with anger and resignation. This reckless action had put them in even greater danger. Right, Drax, however, gave a smirk, believing his move to be brilliant. In his naive mind, any price was worth paying as long as it could lure Thanos out. He hadn't considered the magnitude of the trouble the Kree's presence would cause them, nor had he realized that his actions would lead to countless deaths and destruction. He was solely obsessed with revenge, recklessly pursuing his goal. "You idiot," Rocket couldn't help but rant. "Is your brain full of shit?" "I am Groot." Even the usually mild-mannered Groot couldn't help but complain, waving his branch-like arms to express his dissatisfaction. But now was not the time for infighting. They all knew that surviving the Kree was the most important thing. Biu Star-Lord spun nimbly in the air, firing at Ronan. His movements were agile and swift, his twin guns blasting out a continuous stream of energy beams. However, all the attacks were blocked by Ronan's energy barrier. Star-Lord's expression darkened, his attacks ineffective, leaving him utterly frustrated. Gamora roamed the battlefield, weaving through the Kree ranks like a ghost. Her agility and swift movement swiftly slew the Kree's lives. She knew she was no match for Ronan in a head-on confrontation, so she had to seize the opportunity to deliver a decisive blow. This was her preferred fighting style, waiting for the perfect moment. Drax pinned Ronan down head-on. His powerful frame, like an unshakable mountain, engaged Ronan in a fierce struggle. For a moment, Ronan was unable to break free from Drax's grip. Star-Lord and Rocket fired at Ronan, attempting to drain his energy. While their attacks couldn't penetrate Ronan's energy barrier, they did put him under some pressure. Groot, working with Gamora, mowed down the Kree's ranks. He wove massive vines from his body, entwining the Kree or sending them flying with his branch-like arms. While Groot's strength wasn't as strong as Drax's, his agility and control posed a significant challenge to the Kree. The Kree's offensive was stalled by these 5 individuals. Despite the Kree's immense strength, they managed to hold their own and cause considerable trouble. This was unbelievable. "Quick! Counterattack!" The others, seeing their opportunity, quickly organized a counterattack. They boarded their spaceships and engaged the Kree's air forces. The fierce battle filled the sky with flames as the two sides exchanged blows. Seeing this, Ronan sneered. His eyes were filled with disdain and arrogance, mocking the Kree's presumption. "Fire," Ronan commanded, and the Kree mothership began to gather immense energy. A dazzling flash of light flashed, and the mothership unleashed a volley of fire. The powerful energy beam instantly destroyed all the Reaver and space pirate ships. Only the Kree ships remained in the sky, and they held a commanding advantage. The muzzles of their guns slowly swung, like the maw of a ferocious beast, towards the ground. The black muzzles emanated a chilling aura, like a pack of ferocious beasts poised for action, ready to unleash destructive force. Ronan's orders were unnecessary. The Kree moved like a precision war machine, efficient and ruthless. Whoosh, whoosh, sharp whistles instantly pierced the sky. And dazzling streaks of light streaked across the sky like meteors, hurtling towards the ground. Artillery fire poured down like a torrential rain, shattering the void under this ferocious assault. Each explosion sent a cloud of dust and flames, further shattering this land already shrouded in mystery and chaos. From ferocious raiders to cunning space pirates to those seeking pleasure in the void, all became targets of the Kree. No one was spared from this relentless barrage. The raiders fled in panic, unable to escape the relentless force of destruction. They tried to resist with their own ships, but their resistance proved powerless against the Kree's overwhelming firepower. Those who had come to enjoy themselves were now plunged into endless terror, crying out in despair, unable to avert their impending destruction. After the bombardment, the Kree methodically began collecting the spoils. Like greedy ants, they spared no valuables. Countless resources were plundered by the Kree, from precious energy crystals to ancient mystical artifacts, from mountains of wealth to advanced technology, everything of value was plundered. Strangely, the collector had yet to emerge. Weiss stood quietly by, filled with doubt. He couldn't believe that the collector, who had lived for countless years, would be so defenseless against the Kree. The collector's collection included many powerful weapons. He couldn't be so easily overwhelmed by the Kree. He must have foreseen all this and therefore held back. Wes mused to himself, the collector must have his own plans and considerations, though they were currently unknown. The question weighed on Wes' mind whether or not to act. He was caught in a fierce internal struggle. With the Power Stone right before his eyes, now was undoubtedly the best time to act. The Kree were distracted after their bombing raids and looting, and they wouldn't have imagined that in this chaotic situation, someone would dare to rashly seize the orb. Wes's eyes shifted between the Kree and the orb, his mind racing, weighing the pros and cons of action. After a moment's deliberation, Wes no longer hesitated and decided to act. Just then, a voice behind him called out, "You've made your decision." It was deep and magnetic, yet it resonated like thunderbolt from the blue. He couldn't sense anyone. A surge of unease welled up in him. Who was watching him from behind? What was this person's motive? Weiss's nerves tensed instantly as he realized that his actions had been noticed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 Taking Action. Weiss's nerves were on edge. He carefully cast several shields around himself. These shields shimmered, layer upon layer, enveloping him. "Don't be so cautious. I'm just a frail old man," the voice echoed again, a faint smile lingering in his voice. However, Weiss certainly wouldn't trust a stranger. In this universe fraught with danger and uncertainty, trusting others can be fatal. He turned cautiously, his movements slow and careful, as if facing a beast poised to pounce at any moment. When he turned, he saw a white-haired old man. His hair was as white as snow, and his face was marked by the marks of time. The collector. Weiss felt a surge of surprise. In the void, the collector was the only one Weiss knew who had the ability to evade his perception. He appeared to be an ancient human, but in reality, he was an alien with immense powers. He was said to possess immortality, the ability to travel through time and space, and the ability to foresee the future. The collector's immortality stemmed from a bet he lost with the goddess of death, forbidding him to ever set foot in the realm of the dead. For millions of years, the collector, his wife, and their children lived on Cygnus X1, living and contemplating life. His wife, tired of living a long life, gave up her immortality. The collector was heartbroken, his heart filled with pain and loss. Later, he felt he needed a hobby to maintain his sanity. He began collecting intriguing artifacts and life forms from across the universe. Eventually, his obsession reached a point where he began to collect things he considered rare or precious simply for the sake of collecting. The collector studied Weiss with interest, his eyes like a scanner, as if to absorb every detail of Weiss. "I have seen you in countless futures." Weiss maintained a defensive posture, his body tense, staring warily at the collector. He wondered what the collector's purpose was. "You are special. Since your appearance, the future has become uncertain." The collector paused. "If only I could collect you." A hint of greed and desire lingered in his words. Weiss's fingers flicked, and a black light shot out, shooting towards the collector like a bolt of lightning. However, the beam of light was deflected before it even reached the collector. The black light struck a nearby building, instantly melting it and transforming it into a pool of blazing liquid. This guy's strength is truly not to be underestimated. Weiss marveled inwardly, his gaze fixed on the collector with even greater vigilance. The collector remained nonchalant. "I mean no harm. I simply came to see what's so special about someone who changes the future." His voice was calm and gentle, without a hint of hostility. "But it doesn't look like you welcome me." With these words, the collector vanished, as if he had never been there. Weiss was baffled. He stood there, his brow furrowed. What on earth did this guy see in the future? These old guys are always so secretive. Weiss pondered inwardly, the collector's puzzling words replaying in his mind. Weiss could sense a fear of him in the collector. This only deepened his confusion. After repeated reflection, he could find no reason to fear the collector. Ignore him for now. Weiss shook his head, deciding to put the collector's matter aside for now. Weiss had firmly resolved to seize the Power Stone. Possessing both the Mind and Reality Stones, he had become the focus of numerous forces. Sooner or later, he would be targeted by other powerful forces, a storm that was inevitable. Rather than sit back and wait for those greedy eyes to focus on him, plunging him into endless trouble and danger, it would be better to collect more stones beforehand and continuously strengthen his power. Having made his decision, Weiss joined the battle without hesitation. Magic Rain of Light. Weiss waved his wand, muttering the incantation. Instantly, countless points of light shot towards the spaceship in mid-air like dazzling meteors. These points of light, brimming with powerful energy, traced beautiful yet deadly paths through the sky. Boom, boom, a series of explosions echoed, and clouds of fireworks burst into life in the sky, like a dazzling display of fireworks. Invisible enemy. Activate the detectors. The Kree lieutenant, perceptive of the anomaly, immediately gave the order. The equipment swiftly activated, and the Kree's advanced technology detected Weiss, who had become invisible. "Everyone, fire freely." The commander's voice was cold and decisive. Instantly, countless artillery fire poured down on Weiss like a torrential rain. Boom, boom, violent explosions echoed one after another, and the area around Weiss, about a kilometer in size, seemed to have shrunk several stories. The ground trembled under the impact of the artillery fire, and smoke and dust filled the air, leaving a devastating mess. The Kree finally stopped their attack. As the smoke and dust gradually cleared, Weiss was unharmed. Weiss waved his wand downward, and the spaceships in the sky fell like dumplings. The enemy has the ability to manipulate gravity. Activate the anti-gravity devices. The Kree supercomputer immediately sprang into action. Most of the spaceships stopped falling and floated again. Only a few that flew too low crashed before their anti-gravity devices could activate. "Move the Slayers," the adjutant gave the order. Holes appeared in the bottom of the main ship, and hundreds of Kree leaped out. Their strong bodies withstood the impact and they landed safely on the ground. The Slayers were the elite of the Kree, each one a truly exceptional talent. However, Weiss refused to engage them. "Blizzard," Weiss whispered softly, his voice soft yet filled with boundless magical power. Suddenly, an icy wind howled, its piercing force like the roar of an enraged dragon. Wherever the wind passed, sand and rocks flew, and the world was in chaos, instantly obscuring the Slayers' vision. However, these Slayers didn't rely solely on sight to fight. Their rigorous training gave them keen energy perception, allowing them to see Weiss's location even when their vision was obscured by the icy wind. Without hesitation, they charged towards Weiss, their steps firm and powerful, each one akin to the beat of death. But the wind grew stronger, its biting chill piercing the soul. Like countless razor-sharp blades, the wind sliced through everything around them. Before they could even reach Weiss, the extreme cold unleashed its terrifying power. In this fierce cold wind, the Slayers' movements gradually slowed, their bodies covered in a layer of frost, as if they were wearing a crystal-clear ice armor. As time passed, the frost grew thicker, and finally, these powerful Slayers were frozen into ice sculptures. They maintained their charging posture, their faces still full of grim expressions. Chapter 258 Sisters. The Kree's vaunted Slayers wouldn't be easily defeated. These Slayers were an elite force meticulously nurtured by the Kree, weathering countless brutal battles and possessing tenacious vitality and formidable combat prowess. Given a moment, they could escape through their own strength and tenacity. However, Weiss wouldn't give them that chance. A cold, murderous look shone in his eyes, as if he were watching a herd of lambs to the slaughter. He stretched out his index finger and thumb, gently pinching the air. A thin thread appeared between his fingers. The thread seemed insignificant. Weiss pulled back, and the thread tightened, like a bowstring about to be released. The subtle tension permeated the air, evoking a sense of impending danger. He released it, and a sharp whistling sound echoed, like a blade slicing through the air. The sound was sharp and piercing, stinging the eardrums. The Slayers paid no heed to the tiny thread. They reasoned that their armor could withstand a single hit from the ship's main gun, so what threat could this tiny thread pose? However, they soon paid a heavy price for their underestimation. The thread effortlessly sliced the leading Slayer cleanly in two. Blood instantly splattered across the ice, staining the pristine white snow red and creating a horrifying spectacle. The adjutant sensed the danger, but it was too late. Horrified, his face etched with fear, he watched helplessly as his men were instantly severed by this insignificant thread. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of Slayers were severed by this insignificant thread. Their bodies fell to the ground with a dull thud. The once mighty Slayer army was now reduced to a bloody ruin. The air was thick with the scent of blood. No, the adjutant roared in despair and a shrill cry. His eyes widened in disbelief and unbearable pain. The Slayers, once the pride and awe of the Kree, had been annihilated in such a short time. It was a devastating blow to him. He stood there, face pale as paper, body trembling slightly, eyes filled with anger and deep resentment. "Fire!" the lieutenant shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice brimming with rage and determination. However, Weiss had vanished. Elsewhere, Ronan was engaged in a thrilling, fierce battle with Star-Lord and his four companions. "What did you say?" Ronan suddenly roared in the midst of the battle. His voice was deafening like thunder, its powerful waves causing the air around them to tremble slightly. He didn't believe what the lieutenant said on the communicator. The lieutenant mustered his courage and once again told Ronan the tragic news of the Slayer's annihilation. Ronan's expression darkened, like the sky before a storm, gloomy and suffocating. He immediately hung up the call, his entire attention focused on the enemy before him. His single thought was to kill all five before returning to Wes. Ronan roared in anger. He swung the massive hammer in his hand with overwhelming force, striking Drax's powerful chest. Drax's towering form was sent flying like a cannonball, arcing through the air before crashing heavily into Groot. The two tumbled across the ground, creating a massive crater and sending clouds of dust soaring. Ronan's right hand wasn't finished yet. Energy beams shot out from his right hand at Star-Lord. Star-Lord dodged Ronan's attacks like a nimble monkey, dodging left and right, maneuvering swiftly, deftly avoiding Ronan's attacks. His movements were agile and swift, a dazzling sight. Rocket watched Groot being sent flying, his heart filled with rage. "You blue bastard," he shouted. At the same time, he swiftly launched several bombs, which arced through the air, hurtling towards Ronan. Bang! The bombs exploded with a resounding roar, sending flames and smoke billowing into the sky. Unfortunately, the bombs were unable to penetrate Ronan's sturdy energy shield. "Let's get rid of you, you rat first," Ronan sneered, his eyes filled with disdain and contempt. "Asshole, I'm a raccoon." Rocket retreated, firing, looking for a chance to counterattack. However, without Drax as a human shield, Ronan quickly caught up with Rocket. He raised his foot, a powerful hammer-like kick that sent Rocket flying. Fortunately, Rocket's body had been modified, or the kick would have been fatal. Ronan's foot hadn't even come down yet, his heart filled with rage and murderous intent. He was now in a state of fury. Furious, Ronan finally revealed a flaw. Gamora had been waiting for this opportunity. The dagger in her hand stabbed Ronan's eyes like a venomous snake, so fast that Ronan had no time to dodge. The specially crafted dagger pierced Ronan's energy shield and hindered, piercing his eye. Just as Gamora was about to succeed, a sharp ding, a dagger intercepted Gamora's blade. "Nebula!" Gamora cried out in fury, her voice filled with surprise and anger. The attacker was Nebula, her sister. Nebula was also Thanos' adopted daughter, but not as cherished or accomplished as Gamora. Having grown up together, Nebula knew Gamora intimately. Knowing she was no match for Gamora, she waited for her chance. Gamora waited for her chance to assassinate Ronan, and so did Nebula. From the results, it looked like Nebula had won. Having had a rare opportunity ruined, Gamora was filled with rage and resentment. Ronan, having shrugged off death, was furious and threw a punch at Gamora. Gamora blocked with her arms, but was still sent flying. Her bones cracked, and she felt a sharp pain. The pain made her face pale. Ronan showed no mercy to the woman who had nearly killed him. His eyes were filled with coldness and murderous intent. He wanted to strike again, to annihilate Gamora once and for all. However, Nebula stopped him. "She's mine." Nebula swung the dagger and approached Gamora. Her eyes were filled with jealousy and hatred. If it weren't for Gamora, she wouldn't have become her current half-machine, half-biological form. Moreover, deep within Nebula's heart, a fierce hatred burned. She hated Thanos, the cold and ruthless overlord. Growing up in Thanos' shadow, she had never received true love and attention, while Gamora had always been Thanos' most cherished daughter. This unfair treatment filled Nebula's heart with jealousy and resentment. She longed to make Thanos feel pain, even the slightest bit. Perhaps killing Gamora, Thanos' most cherished daughter, would even bring him some pain. This thought swirled in Nebula's mind like a mantra. She seemed to see Thanos' expression of shock and pain, which made her feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Chapter 259 Success. Nebula gripped the dagger tightly, the sharp blade seemingly fused to her palm. She approached Gamora, each step weighted with hatred. A mad glint gleamed in her eyes, a madness blinded by hatred, like a burning flame, fiery and dangerous. Her mind was consumed by a single thought, to kill Gamora. Only in this way could she find some relief, some vengeance against Thanos. She no longer considered the consequences, her rationality consumed by the flames of hatred. She simply wanted to vent her hatred on Gamora. However, Gamora was stronger than Nebula. Despite the pain from the fractured bones in her arms, she stubbornly withstood Nebula's attacks. Meanwhile, Drax regained his feet and charged at Ronan like a ferocious beast. "Hold him like this," Star-Lord shouted. He landed on the ground and quickly retrieved a device. It quickly transformed into a gun mount, and Star-Lord aimed at Ronan. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, Wes appeared behind him. Star-Lord, sensing someone behind him, quickly drew his gun, but it was too late. He was restrained, unable to even move a finger. With a flick of his hand, Wes's orb flew from Star-Lord's pocket and landed in his palm. Wes's timing was perfect. With everyone else held hostage, he effortlessly seized the orb. "No, Ronan," witnessing this, roared. Hand over the Power Stone, Ronan abandoned Drax and Grodd and rushed towards Wes. He couldn't let the Power Stone fall into the hands of others. The nearby ground suddenly transformed into a swamp, swallowing everything in its path. Everyone began to sink, plunging into a bottomless abyss. Ronan soared into the air, continuing his charge towards Wes. His movements were swift and agile, like a flash of lightning. The swamp was flat for Grodd. Grodd sprouted branches and pulled his trapped companions to their feet. While his power wasn't as strong as Drax's, it proved immensely effective at this crucial moment. With a flick of his wand, Weiss created a dimensional rift that slashed towards Ronan, attempting to halt his pursuit. Ronan dodged midair, his movements nimble, agile, and cautious. He felt threatened by the sudden appearance of a mysterious figure. Having obtained the Power Stone, Weiss abandoned the group and teleported back to his ship. Weiss's appearance and disappearance were so abrupt that Rocket and the others were unaware of what had happened. Their faces were filled with surprise and confusion. Ronan etched Weiss's image into his memory. "Chase," he shouted. With the Power Stone stolen, the Kree had no reason to remain in the void. The army began to retreat like a tide. Nebula had considered dispatching Gamora before leaving, but it was clear Ronan wouldn't let her delay Weiss's pursuit. Nebula gave up, glared at Gamora, and turned to follow the Kree troops. After all the Kree had evacuated the void, Gamora grabbed Star-Lord by the collar and angrily demanded, "Where's the orb?" "It was taken by the mysterious figure who just appeared," Star-Lord said helplessly, his face filled with frustration and regret. "What?" Rocket shouted, "You idiot! What about her bounty?" Several members of the yet-to-be-formed Guardians of the Galaxy began arguing, their voices filled with bickering and accusations. Seeing them like this, it was hard to imagine they would one day become teammates who trusted each other's lives. However, all this noise and chaos had nothing to do with Wes. He was focused solely on his own goals and plans. And he cared nothing for the arguments and disputes in the void. Wes calmly entered a coordinate. With a command, the ship began a space jump. In a moment, the ship disappeared into the void, successfully escaping the pursuing Kree army. When they reappeared, they had arrived at a massive planet, a planet 100 times the size of Earth, and its vastness was immeasurable. It was a prehistoric place, with no civilization yet. Everything seemed primordial and pure. As the spaceship slowly descended, Weiss peered out the window to see numerous gigantic creatures. Giant birds, hundreds of meters long, soared freely in the sky, their wings like vast clouds, obscuring the sun. Every flap of their wings created a powerful blast of air. On the ground, insects grew as large as tanks. The oxygen concentration here far exceeded that on Earth, making the air feel exceptionally fresh and comfortable. With Weiss's exceptional physical fitness, he naturally wouldn't suffer from oxygen poisoning. He easily adapted to the environment. Weiss carefully observed his surroundings. Finally, he found a suitable spot. After returning the spaceship to space, he retrieved the cosmic orb. He examined the treasure carefully. A clever mechanism on its exterior blocked the transmission of the Power Stone's power, allowing him to observe it safely. Of the 6 Infinity Stones, the Power Stone was arguably the most violent. It embodied unimaginable power, like a beast poised to lose control at any moment. If unable to withstand its might, flesh and matter would be annihilated, reduced to nothingness. However, Weiss had his own plans. Ronan was able to withstand the Power Stone in the film, but Weiss was stronger than him. He was confident he could withstand the stone's baptism and harness its immense power for his own benefit. This planet was discovered and documented by the Asgardians during a lengthy interstellar exploration. The Asgardian exploration fleet, traversing the vast universe, stumbled upon this vast and mysterious planet. They had meticulously documented it on their interstellar maps. Due to its secluded location and the Asgardian strict secrecy, it was virtually impossible for ordinary people to find. Therefore, Weiss chose this planet as the location for his search for the Power Stone. Here, he had ample time to carry out his plan without worrying about outside interference. Setting up the magic circle was a difficult and complex task, but Weiss handled it methodically. He concentrated his energy, mobilizing his immense magical powers to weave an intricate magic circle around him. This circle masked his presence, ensuring that any sound he made would not be detected, ensuring his actions remained unnoticed. After completing all the arrangements, Weiss's heart was filled with anticipation. He slowly reached out and unlocked the cosmic orb. A gemstone, shimmering with purple light, floated in the air, its radiance like a brilliant star. Although he already had 2 gemstones, Weiss was still deeply attracted to the Power Stone. Chapter 260 Evolution. Weiss took a deep breath, trying to calm his trembling heart. Although he felt completely confident, having weathered countless challenges and trials, possessing immense strength and unwavering faith, at this moment, facing the devastating power of the Power Stone, he couldn't help but tense up. He slowly extended his right hand, his index finger trembling slightly. The moment it touched the Power Stone, he felt as if struck by a powerful electric shock. A surge of powerful and violent force instantly coursed through his body, causing him to convulse involuntarily. Then, an unbearable, excruciating pain ensued. Weiss felt every muscle being mercilessly torn apart. The pain felt like thousands of sharp blades slicing through his flesh, nearly causing him to faint. Every nerve screamed in agony, as if seared by a raging fire. Even every cell felt the immense pressure, as if it could burst at any moment. The violent force of the Power Stone continuously washed over him, like a surging flood, unstoppable. Wes felt as if he were caught in a terrifying storm, threatened at any moment by this overwhelming force. Yet, even so, he remained sane. He knew that losing his mind at this crucial moment would mean utter defeat. He relentlessly cast healing spells, mobilizing the magical energy within him, striving to repair his body, ravaged by the Power Stone. The light of healing magic shone around him, soothing his wounded form like warm sunlight. He continuously strengthened his body, infusing magical energy into every cell, making it tougher and stronger. Over and over, his body was reshaped. Each reshaping was an evolution. Under the baptism of the Power Stone, Wes's body gradually transformed. His muscles grew stronger, his nerves sharper, his cells more vibrant. He was undergoing a complete transformation, his life evolving. Time slipped by unnoticed, and Wes threw himself wholeheartedly into the battle against the Power Stone. He lost track of time, of everything around him, with only one conviction in his heart, to conquer the Power Stone's power and hold it within his own hands. Finally, after an indeterminate amount of time, Wes was able to control the energy of the power gem within him. He felt a violent force gradually become docile under his control, like a tamed beast. Wes opened his eyes, his gaze filled with confidence and determination. He knew he had successfully taken a significant step, a giant leap toward his goal. Wes stared at his right hand, as white as jade. It was a flawless work of art. Not a single pore could be seen, smooth and delicate like the purest white jade. Every inch of its skin radiated a faint luster. He moved his fingers slightly, feeling the newfound power surge through him. Then, he braced his right hand against the rock wall, attempting to stand. However, he had underestimated his own strength. With a single puff, 5 neat fingerprints instantly appeared on the solid rock. The solid rock was as soft as dough under his hand, vulnerable to a single blow. Wes stared at his right hand in amazement, his heart filled with shock. He retrieved a piece of iron from the void. Yet, with a gentle clench of his right hand, the iron was kneaded and shaped like Play-Doh. The iron shifted and transformed in his grip, seemingly offering no resistance. His body had completely transcended the boundaries of human form, becoming immensely powerful. Weiss pulled up his dashboard, his gaze fixed on his wizard level. The number had seemingly jumped 2 notches, reaching level 9. This number represented a new level of strength, and a powerful sense of accomplishment washed over him. Ha 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 ha! Weiss couldn't help but burst into laughter. The laughter echoed through the empty cave, filled with joy and excitement. This time, the harvest had been truly fruitful. The power of the Power Stone had greatly enhanced his strength. However, he also knew that the most important thing now was to familiarize himself with his strengthened body and master this newfound power. This planet was a wonderful place, vast and uninhabited. As Weiss adjusted to his surging magic power and strength, he collected the creatures of the planet. He traveled across this wild land, searching for interesting creatures. Whenever he encountered a creature that interested him, he would use magic to transport it to his own dimension, bringing it some vitality. However, these creatures didn't survive long in his dimension. Lacking a complete food chain, they couldn't obtain the necessary resources to survive. Soon, they became food for plants and returned to nature. However, it would take countless years for the dimension to evolve animals on its own. I hope Kingpin has everything ready. Weiss suddenly thought of Kingpin on Earth. He hoped that Kingpin would fulfill their agreement and prepare what he needed. Weiss returned to his own dimension. This dimension was his secret base and his unique safe haven. He began to expand and strengthen it. As his powerful magic surged, the dimension began to undergo miraculous changes. The already vast space expanded several times. However, despite its increased size, the space still felt somewhat empty. Aside from the lush vegetation, no other living creatures existed. These plants grew quietly within the dimension, exuding the scent of life, but they could not bring true vitality to the space. He and Jandy were the only beings able to move freely within the entire dimension. Weiss looked at the silent space, and a sense of loneliness welled up in his heart. He even missed Matao Korea and Matao Sakura. When they were there, this space at least had some popularity. Moreover, such a large space really needed someone to manage it. Zondi had always been dedicated to managing the Mage Tower, which had already kept her extremely busy. The various affairs in the Mage Tower required his meticulous care and arrangements, leaving him with no extra energy to manage this ever-expanding space. Maybe I can recruit some people, Weiss murmured to himself. He began to think about suitable candidates, but no one was suitable at the moment. Chapter 261 Encounter. After adjusting to his newfound powers, Weiss decided to leave. Shortly after his departure, Ronan arrived with a massive Kree army. The Kree arrived like a surging tide, filled with endless rage and determination, determined to find Weiss, who had taken the Power Stone. The Kree launched a sweeping search across the planet, leaving no corner untouched, turning the planet upside down. Soon, they discovered traces of Weiss's past, altered terrain and the lingering presence of magic in the caves. He was here, but he's gone. Ronan's voice was filled with anger and resentment. He stared fiercely at the cave where Weiss had once been. He raised his foot, and with a powerful force, it collapsed. Debris flew, dust billowed, and Ronan's rage swept through everything around him like a storm. Damn it, Ronan cursed, his face dark and grim. Nebula, standing beside him, stared at him coldly, her eyes devoid of any emotion. What if you catch up? You're no match for that guy. Nebula's words stung Ronan's pride like an icy knife. Ronan glared at Nebula fiercely, silent. Rage and humiliation filled his heart, but he knew Nebula's words were true. Thanos had dealt him a good lesson after the previous mission failed. If it weren't for Gamora's betrayal, he would have been executed long ago. He wondered how Thanos had known about Weiss's presence on this planet. Despite their haste, they were still a step behind. Ronan knew Thanos wouldn't give him another chance. Pressure and fear filled his heart. He had to find Weiss and retrieve the Power Stone as soon as possible, or his fate would be dire. The two men stood face to face, the atmosphere tense and tense, ready to erupt at any moment. Just then, Ronan's lieutenant trotted over. They're heading towards N998, his voice broke the tense atmosphere. Ronan immediately controlled his emotions. Move, Ronan gave the order. The Kree army sprang into action, boarding their spaceships and heading for N998. Nebula relayed the intelligence back. On an unknown planet in the universe, Thanos' army was assaulting it. This force was vast and powerful, well-equipped, and possessed incredible combat effectiveness. The people of the planet rose up in resistance, organizing an effective counterattack to defend their homeland. However, their strength was dwarfed by Thanos' forces. The arrival of the Black Order's 5 generals in the battlefield instantly reversed the tide. The Black Order's 5 generals were like 5 terrifying demons, unstoppable wherever they went. The planet's army was crushed, countless people slaughtered. Blood stained the ground crimson, and the scent of death filled the air. Thanos stood quietly outside the battlefield, his eyes impassive. He observed everything before him, without a trace of pity. This efficiency is too low. Only by gathering all the Infinity Stones can I fulfill my wish, Thanos thought to himself, his goal being to gather the Infinity Stones and realize his grand plan. He harbored no sentimental feelings for the planets he attacked. The one-sided slaughter was swiftly over. Only half of the planet's population remained, a principle Thanos held. He believed it was overpopulated and its resources could not sustain such a large population. Its current state was remarkably similar to Titan's. Having witnessed Titan's destruction firsthand, Thanos believed that by eliminating half of its inhabitants, the planet would regain its former prosperity. However, no one understood his reasoning. Others viewed Thanos as a cruel demon whose actions were unforgivable. But Thanos firmly believed his actions were the right one, believing only this way could save the universe. After defeating their enemies, the Black Order returned to Thanos' side. They knelt respectfully, their heads bowed, their eyes filled with awe, as they quietly awaited Thanos' command. Thanos' towering figure was like an unshakable mountain, his gaze deep and cold, as if piercing all things. He narrowed his eyes slightly, pondered for a moment, and then said in a deep voice, "Ebony Maw, Black Dwarf, depart for N998 immediately." Yes, Ebony Maw and Black Dwarf responded in unison, their voices filled with determination and obedience, without a trace of hesitation. To them, Thanos' orders were absolute, and they must be carried out without hesitation. Their actions were decisive and swift, without a moment's hesitation. They led their men and quickly boarded the spaceship. The hatch slowly closed with a dull thud. With a roar of its engines, the spaceship slowly lifted off, speeding towards N998. As to why Thanos didn't go in person, there were many considerations. It was far from the right time. Every action Thanos took could potentially trigger a drastic change in the entire universe. He was a feared overlord of the universe, his every move closely watched. If he were to personally take action, it would mean the official start of all-out war, plunging the entire universe into endless flames and chaos. Yet, his plan hadn't yet reached that crucial stage. He meticulously planned everything, each step carefully considered. He wanted to appear at the most opportune moment, with a most powerful presence, to achieve his grand yet controversial goal. Like a patient hunter, he quietly waited for his prey to enter optimal striking range. During this process, he dispatched his most capable personnel to carry out missions, both to test the enemy's strength and reactions and to ensure that his plan progressed steadily as he envisioned. He couldn't let a moment's impulse prematurely expose his full strength and disrupt the overall plan. Only when everything was complete, when the time was ripe, would he personally step onto the battlefield and begin the final battle that would determine the fate of the universe. Weiss's ship landed on N998, within the protection of the Nova Corps. Looking up, the planet, while not as prosperous as the dazzling Pearl of Xander, was still far superior to most other worlds in the universe. The sky here is a brilliant blue, the clouds are white as snow, the land is shaded by verdant trees, and the rivers flow gently. In the city, buildings are arranged in an orderly pattern, and technology and nature coexist harmoniously. On the streets, people are busy and fulfilled, their faces filled with hope and longing for life. However, Weiss never expected to encounter an acquaintance on this seemingly ordinary planet. Chapter 262 Alarm. "It's you." The moment Star-Lord saw Wes, he reacted incredibly quickly, almost instinctively drawing his gun. The other 4 Guardians of the Galaxy simultaneously drew their weapons, their movements in unison. Their eyes were filled with vigilance and hostility, their weapons pointed steadily at Wes. Wes paid no heed to their actions. Those powerful weapons were like toys to him. A faint smile crossed his face, and he said casually, "The universe is so small." His demeanor was composed, without a trace of nervousness. "Where's the Power Stone?" Gamora asked anxiously. She knew the importance of the Power Stone, a powerful artifact capable of changing the fate of the universe. Wes wasn't so kind as to tell them the truth. Seeing the prospect of a fight brewing between the group, the surrounding crowd quickly moved away. A clearing, approximately 10 meters long, formed around the 6 men, and silence reigned. "What's going on?" The patrol's voice broke the silence. Seeing Star-Lord, one of the patrolmen couldn't help but exclaim, "You again, Star-Lord?" A troublemaker wherever he went, was a well-known figure in the Nova Corps. Furthermore, these men had escaped prison. However, several Nova Corps Centurions granted them amnesty, seeing they were strong enough to rival Ronan. "Can't you just leave it alone?" the patrol leader said helplessly, his head beginning to ache. Every encounter with Star-Lord always led to some kind of trouble. "This guy is here to pick a fight," Star-Lord said without hesitation, his expression incredibly sincere, as if he were truly an innocent victim. He'd done this countless times before, and even with the most advanced lie detector, he could still tell the truth without batting an eyelid. The patrol leader clearly didn't believe his lies. He frowned and glanced at everyone present. "Whatever your conflict is, you're not allowed to fight on this planet," Weiss shrugged, his expression nonchalant. The Guardians of the Galaxy also slowly sheathed their weapons, knowing it wasn't wise to confront the patrol on Nova Corps territory. "Good, don't cause me any trouble, or I'll throw you in jail," the patrol leader threatened, and then he left with his men. Star-Lord pointed 2 fingers at his eyes, signaling, "I'll be watching you." What was supposed to be a cool gesture, now made comical by the witty Star-Lord, was a joke. Weiss couldn't help but laugh at him. Star-Lord always managed to bring a touch of levity and humor to even the most tense atmosphere. Star-Lord was furious, his fists clenched, and he was about to charge. Just as he was about to lose his temper, Gamora, quick-witted and quick-handed, grabbed him by the neck and pulled him back. Gamora leaned in close to his ear and whispered, "Follow him quietly. We'll strike after he leaves this planet." Gamora's breath gently brushed Star-Lord's ear, and a look of fascination suddenly appeared on his face. However, Gamora was deeply disgusted by his reaction and pushed Star-Lord away without hesitation. Seeing Star-Lord's embarrassment, the other 3 couldn't help but laugh. Drax, in particular, mercilessly mocked Star-Lord for having the desire but not the courage. Upon hearing this, Star-Lord immediately launched into a defensive argument. He boasted about his rich romantic history, recounting past adventures and encounters with beautiful women. He completely failed to notice Gamora's increasingly grim expression. What a great team. Wes watched the Guardians of the Galaxy interact with a touch of envy. He knew such a team was full of energy and cohesion. Although the members often argued, they always came together in critical moments. However, Wes was also self-aware. He knew that his personality made it difficult for him to meet like-minded people. He often kept to himself, accustomed to living alone. Meanwhile, Wes began to wander around N998. While the planet wasn't as prosperous as Xander, the food there was quite unique. He wandered through the bustling streets, savoring the diverse cuisine and taking in the unique charm of this planet. Even as Weiss savored his feast, the Kree army arrived in the nearby starfield. Ebony Maw and Black Dwarf had joined forces with their respective fleets. As Thanos' advisor, Ebony Maw possessed immense wisdom and authority. He directly took control of the Kree army, ruthlessly demonstrating his power. Ronan was resentful and infuriated by Ebony Maw's tyranny. Yet, he also understood that he could not disobey Thanos' orders. Faced with Thanos' majesty, he could only reluctantly obey. Ebony Maw's tactics were brutal and direct. He unhesitatingly sent the Kree as vanguard, clearly using them as cannon fodder. He cared nothing for the Kree's lives, viewing them merely as tools to achieve Thanos' goals. "Aren't you afraid that guy will disobey orders?" Nebula watched Ronan storm away. "He wouldn't dare," Ebony Maw said, unconcerned with Ronan's thoughts, his tone brimming with confidence. "This is punishment for not completing their mission." Ebony Maw looked at Nebula and Black Dwarf with a meaningful look, as if warning them against any second thoughts. Black Dwarf snorted coldly and ignored Ebony Maw. He was displeased with Ebony Maw's arrogance, but he also knew that he had no choice but to endure. Unlike the other Black Orders who followed Thanos, Black Dwarf pledged his allegiance to Thanos out of necessity for his race's survival. His race excelled in combat and had always served as interstellar mercenaries. Due to their sparse population, they struggled to survive in the universe. Thanos took notice, offering him the choice of submission or destruction. He had no choice but to become Thanos' pawn. Nebula stared coldly at Ebony Maw, her eyes filled with disgust and defiance. Ebony Maw knew of their second thoughts, but he didn't care. He periodically reminded them of the consequences of betraying Thanos. Thanos' vast army, like a surging dark tide, slowly approached N998. This army exuded a chilling aura of terror, as if it could devour everything in its path. Those hideous warships, armed with powerful weapons, flashed with a cold light. Meanwhile, a Nova Corps probe vessel was patrolling the universe. The small, sensitive vessel, equipped with advanced detection equipment, was constantly alert to any disturbances. When the massive signal of Thanos' army suddenly appeared on the probe's instruments, the crew members tensed. Their hearts raced, their eyes filled with shock and terror. But as warriors of the Nova Corps, they quickly calmed down and took immediate action. The crew expertly operated their instruments, sounding the alarm for the emergency. Chapter 263 Volcano. N998, the sirens blared like a sharp blade, instantly shattering the previously tranquil sky. Alert, alert, all residents, please seek shelter. The rapid, resounding call echoed relentlessly in the air, each note hammering at the hearts of the people. I repeat, all residents, please seek shelter. The solemn warning echoed again and again. Each repetition seemed to urge the people to race against time and fight the impending danger. By then, the terrifying silhouette of Thanos' army could be faintly seen in the sky. Patrols swiftly moved through the crowd, directing everyone to the shelters in an orderly manner. Following the patrol's instructions, the people dropped their work, carrying their families and valuables, and headed for the shelters. Among the crowd were the elderly, children, and pregnant women, all with fear and anxiety on their faces. But with the patrol's encouragement, they remained steadfast and moved forward. Everyone helped and supported each other, facing this sudden crisis together. Children clutched their parents' hands tightly, tears glistening in their eyes. The elders hurried as fast as they could, not wanting to be a burden. Meanwhile, countless spaceships soared into the air to meet Thanos' army. Along the city's broad thoroughfares, the ground began to slowly part, revealing rows of neatly arranged gun ports. If the enemy approached, these ports would unleash a powerful barrage. In record time, the entire planet N998 was on a war footing. Every component coordinated seamlessly and efficiently, demonstrating a remarkable level of organizational and operational prowess. A patrolman, busy carrying out his mission, stumbled upon Wes, leisurely enjoying a meal. Anxiety and anger surged, and he shouted, "You're courting death. Get to safety." Knowing he meant well, Wes remained unmoved. "Where's the most desolate place on this planet?" Wes suddenly asked. Though baffled, the patrolman quickly answered, "Of course, the scorching desert to the north." He couldn't understand the thoughts of this man, so calm in the face of danger. "Thank you," Weiss replied briefly, then piloted the spaceship north. The ship sped swiftly, streaking through the sky like an arrow from a bow. Minutes later, Weiss arrived at his destination. A boundless desert lay before him, a sea of yellow sand, rolling and lifeless. The blazing sun beat down mercilessly on the earth, the very air seemed to burn. All around him was desolate, only the howling wind swept across the dunes. Weiss stood silently, a powerful beam of light emanating from his wand, instantly illuminating the desert. He knew Thanos' army was coming for him, and he had deliberately exposed his position to draw the enemy closer. "I wonder if Thanos will come in person," Weiss muttered to himself, his tone thick with anticipation. He was eager to fight the cosmic overlord. The radiance from Weiss was like a brilliant star suddenly bursting forth in the night sky, dazzling and dazzling. This intense light instantly caught the keen attention of Ebony Maw, who stood in the battleship's command room, a stern expression on his face. On the screen before him, Wes's face was vivid and clear. Target spotted. With his command, the army, as if manipulated by an invisible hand, swiftly reversed direction. This sudden change of direction left the Nova Corps completely bewildered. They had been on full alert, prepared to face a direct assault from Thanos' army. But now the enemy had suddenly changed direction, leaving them filled with confusion and anxiety. To ascertain the situation, the Nova Corps quickly dispatched reconnaissance ships to monitor the situation. Following closely behind were the Guardians of the Galaxy, eager to observe the situation. Star-Lord stood in the cockpit, his arms folded across his chest, a look of curiosity on his face. "Hey, guys, it looks like there's something exciting to watch." Star-Lord's voice was tinged with teasing. Gamora frowned, her eyes filled with caution. "Don't let your guard down." Rocket Raccoon excitedly fiddled with various weapons, ready to join the battle at any moment. Wes stood quietly in the desert, looking up at the dark mass of spaceships. The cloud-like scene didn't stir a single jolt of panic in him. "Let's clean up the mess first," Weiss whispered to himself, his tone revealing a calm confidence. He narrowed his eyes slightly, his wand tightly gripped in his hand. Just then, a strange scene began to unfold in the desert. A low, rumbling sound echoed from the depths of the desert, like the murmur of the earth in its slumber. Then, a series of gurgles and gurgles echoed, and bubbles rose from the desert, growing larger and larger. Some immense power surged beneath the surface. As the bubbles continued to rise, the sand began to melt, and a pungent, sulfurous smell filled the air. The smell was so strong and acrid that it felt like the entrance to hell. The temperature around them also began to rise sharply, and the air became scorching and dry. Boom! A deafening roar shattered the desert's silence. Lava erupted from the ground like a raging dragon, instantly dyeing the sky red with fiery red liquid. Dozens of volcanoes seemed to have awakened simultaneously, erupting in unison. The spectacular scene was like the end of the world. The massive crater, like the mouth of a raging beast, continuously erupted with magma. The fiery liquid, like a wild horse unleashed, rushed skyward with unstoppable force. The magma, with its terrifying heat and immense energy, seemed to burn the entire world to ashes. The Vanguard army was instantly annihilated by this sudden disaster. Those ships that hadn't had time to deploy their shields, struck by the magma, exploded instantly. Vast fireballs burst into the sky like dazzling yet deadly fireworks. Other ships were crushed by the magma's powerful momentum, ripped apart like fragile paper. Metal fragments flew everywhere. "Pull up," Ebony Maw's cold voice echoed through the fleet. The ships began to rise rapidly, trying to avoid being hit by the magma. Every ship was running at full speed, their engines roaring with a deafening roar. The crew's faces were filled with fear and anxiety as they frantically operated various instruments, desperately trying to survive this disaster. Not far away, Star-Lord's eyes widened in shock. "Oh my God," he exclaimed, "did that guy do this?" His voice was filled with disbelief. A surge of fear surged through Star-Lord's heart. He had never seen such a powerful force before. Rocket, standing beside him, was also a little frightened, his small body trembling slightly. "This guy is terrifying. We should get out of here," everyone nodded in agreement, except for the reckless Drax. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Fighting. The desert below, ravaged by the volcano, had transformed into a sea of boiling magma. The fiery red liquid surged, emitting a suffocating heat, as if the earth itself were raging in fury. Ebony Maw stood at the mothership's porthole, silently gazing at the chaotic scene, a surge of alarm welling up within him. He knew clearly that the enemy before him was no easy task. However, Thanos' orders were absolute and unquestionable. For Ebony Maw, no matter how difficult the task, he dedicated himself to it. "Open the hatch," Ebony Maw commanded in his distinctive raspy voice. At his command, the mothership's massive hatch slowly swung open with a dull thud. Black Dwarf, clutching his heavy battle axe in one hand, leaped without hesitation. His powerful body plummeted like a meteorite, and Ronan, with a cold snort, followed closely behind. Ebony Maw, carrying the flightless Nebula gracefully, floated down. Wes stood silently, watching the four men surround him, but he didn't move. A faint smile crossed his face. Ebony Maw bowed gracefully, like a distinguished gentleman. "Greetings on behalf of the great Thanos." Wes's immense power forced him to maintain a facade of modesty. Wes smiled. "I thought he'd come in person." His tone was thick with disappointment. Ebony Maw's octopus-like face suddenly darkened. "The great Thanos," but Wes interrupted him. "You're here for the Power Stone, right?" Wes's eyes sharpened. "Yes, if you hand it over, you'll gain wealth and power." Ebony Maw tried to seduce Wes. He was known as the Black Tongue that spreads lies and evil wherever he goes, and he excelled at persuading and even controlling others with words. However, his tactics failed with Wes. From the beginning, Wes felt his spirit and soul being tugged at, but he quickly shook off the influence. "What a sinister guy," Weiss said coldly. Without any nonsense, Weiss attacked directly. The magma erupted again, this time aiming at the four people. Streams of magma rushed up from the ground like angry dragons. Ebony Maw used telekinesis to create a barrier to block the impact of the magma. His telekinesis was powerful and precise, blocking the magma outside and protecting himself. Ronan used energy to defeat the magma. His energy was powerful and violent, smashing the magma into pieces. Black Dwarf, relying on his strong body and armor, rushed straight towards Weiss. Only Nebula was the most embarrassed. She was transformed into a cyborg, and although she could crush ordinary people, she seemed to be in a mess when facing Weiss's attack. Facing Black Dwarf, who was rushing towards him like a bull, Weiss's expression was still calm and composed. He just touched it lightly, and that seemingly casual movement seemed to contain endless magic. In an instant, Black Dwarf was pinned to the spot, unable to move. Only a hint of dust, kicked up by the momentum of his forward movement, slowly fell at his feet. Simultaneously, Weiss's wand swiftly transformed into a great sword radiating a chilling cold light. Weiss thrust the sword backward, precisely blocking Ronan's swift hammer swing. A resounding clang echoed through the air, creating visible ripples that spread outward in circles. In this first clash of power, the two were evenly matched. Ronan's eyes glowed red, bloodthirsty, as he swung the heavy hammer relentlessly, each swing carrying immense force. Weiss precisely blocked Ronan's devastating blows. Dang! Dang! The resounding clashes echoed across the chaotic battlefield. Ronan was a seasoned warrior, after all. During this fierce exchange, he quickly noticed that Weiss's swordsmanship seemed somewhat lacking. He sensed that while Weiss possessed incredible strength, his combat skills were abysmal, like a reckless warrior possessing brute force but no mastery of form. Ronan exploited this vulnerability, and Weiss fell for it. Seizing the opportunity, Ronan gradually gained the upper hand. His attacks intensified, the wind whipped up by his hammer like a whistling gale. At that moment, Ebony Maw, who had been watching for an opening nearby, also sprang into action. He manipulated the scorching lava with the same ease as his own arm. Under his telekinesis, the lava slowly transformed into a massive whip, lashing out at Weiss with scorching heat. Caught between these two, Weiss knew that continuing in close combat would be extremely disadvantageous. Switch! In an instant, he and Ronan swapped positions. The magma whip that had been lashing out at Weiss now lashed fiercely against Ronan's sturdy armor. Though the armor temporarily blocked the blow, the scorching heat still made Ronan gasp. Weiss, however, was not about to miss this golden opportunity. He gripped the greatsword tightly with both hands, raised it high, and lunged at Ronan. The tip of the sword aimed directly at Ronan's throat. Just as it was about to pierce Ronan's throat, Weiss suddenly stopped. Ebony Maw, with his powerful telekinesis, had intercepted Weiss's fatal blow at the critical moment. Ronan swung his hammer fiercely at Weiss, smashing it down hard. Weiss remained calm, his body instantly covered in a transparent armor. Clang! The hammer slammed into the armor, sending sparks flying. Weiss flicked his finger upwards. Instantly, two whirlwinds slowly rose from beneath their feet. At first a small vortex, it quickly grew, emitting sharp, creaking sounds. Within the whirlwind were razor-sharp wind blades, like countless invisible blades, fiercely slicing at Ronan's armor. Sparks flew from the armor as the blades eroded it, leaving scratches of varying depths. Seizing the moment Ronan was trapped by the whirlwind, Weiss apparated, instantly appearing beside Nebula. He surveyed her with a hint of curiosity, whispering, "Your body is quite interesting." Nebula was startled by his sudden appearance, like a cat with its fur standing on end. She eyed Weiss warily, her eyes filled with anger and wariness. Chapter 265. I don't know what to name it. Weiss paid no heed to her reaction, muttering a spell, word magic, binding. Suddenly, golden characters appeared in the air, rapidly transforming into golden ropes that coiled around Zingian like a serpent. Zingian struggled desperately, twisting her cyborg body in an attempt to free herself from the golden ropes. However, no matter how hard she struggled, she could not break free from the magical restraints. Swish! At that moment, countless stones and rocks rained down on Weiss. These stones and rocks came with such force, accompanied by a whistling sound. However, about a meter away from Weiss, they collided with an invisible wall, turning them into pulverized dust, which flew into the air. Elsewhere, Ronan, covered in blood, rushed out of the whirlwind. His armor was tattered, covered in large gashes from the wind blades. Blood oozed from these wounds, staining his body a brilliant crimson. His eyes were red as he watched Wes warily, like a wounded beast, ready to strike again. Seeing the situation was dire, Ebony Maw decided to unleash his most powerful telekinesis on Wes. His telekinesis was invisible and intangible, and its attacks came without warning, making it impossible to defend against. However, his telekinetic attacks caused a certain mental fluctuation. And Wes's mental power was immense, far surpassing Ebony Maw's. Therefore, to Wes, his attack was like a secret exposed to the sun, with no room for concealment. With a simple wave of his hand, Wes easily deflected Ebony Maw's attack, as if brushing away a speck of dust. Thunder roars. Instantly, a pungent stench filled the air. The entire area was enveloped in purple lightning. Like angry dragons, the purple lightning darted through the sky, emitting a tremendous roar. The mighty force of the lightning seemed to shatter the very world. The black dwarf, previously pinned by Weiss, finally broke free from his restraints due to the intense external stimulation and regained his mobility. He shook his head, trying to shake off the dizziness, then gripped his battle axe tightly and charged at Weiss again. Weiss raised his right hand high, then swung it downward fiercely. The entire sky was stirred by his action. The purple lightning that had been raging in the clouds suddenly became a torrential downpour, as if receiving the order to charge. The thick bolts of lightning, like a dragon with bared fangs and claws, carried the power of devastation and annihilation, completely enveloping the entire area. In an instant, the already devastated battlefield was plunged into utter chaos and terror. Dazzling purple light flickered continuously, illuminating everything with an eerie, apocalyptic glow. Each lightning strike was accompanied by a deafening crackling sound, a sound like the sky roaring in agony, hammering at the eardrums of everyone present. Beneath their feet lay a sea of boiling magma, the fiery red liquid swirling and surging, emitting a suffocating heat. Vast bubbles occasionally erupted from the lava, gurgling and gurgling. In such an environment, there was no place to hide. Ebony Maw and his companions were like trapped beasts, gritted their teeth and withstood the relentless onslaught of lightning. Crackling, crackling, the resounding crackle of thunder echoed relentlessly throughout the area, seemingly endless. Time slipped slowly amidst the endless roar of thunder and lightning, each second feeling like an eternity to Ebony Maw and his companions. After several minutes of thunder, the mighty force, reminiscent of apocalyptic judgment, slowly began to subside. As the lightning gradually subsided, the ground, once riddled with holes, became even more horrific. It was as if a giant scraper had slashed away layers of the ground. The once jagged and sunken ravines vanished, replaced by a relatively flat surface. Weiss was surprised that, despite such a fierce onslaught of lightning, Ebony Maw and the others were still alive. Ebony Maw and Ronan were charred, like two pieces of charcoal overheated by a fierce fire. They collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, each breath accompanied by a violent cough, their internal organs severely damaged by the raging lightning. Their bodies twitched periodically, the pain they had just endured still lingering in their bodies. Black Dwarf, relying on his immensely strong body, managed to withstand the overwhelming onslaught of lightning. However, his condition wasn't much better. His body was ripped and torn, a crisscross of deep and shallow wounds. Blood oozed from these wounds, mingling with his lightning-scorched skin, emitting a pungent, burnt smell. The Nova Corps, having watched the battle from afar, seized this golden opportunity and launched an attack. This normally well-trained army, like a tiger unleashed, charged fiercely at the invading army. The invading army, however, was in complete disarray. Without a strong commander to coordinate and direct the troops, they were a disorganized mess, fighting independently and without any clear plan. Furthermore, their ranks were already plagued by internal conflicts and discord, lacking rapport and trust. Faced with the Nova Corps' sudden and ferocious attack, they were unable to mount an effective resistance and were forced to retreat. Some of them were still concerned with rescuing the 4 Ebony Maws, bound by Weiss's magic. After all, these 4 held important positions. Some soldiers attempted to break out in the direction of Ebony Maw and the others, hoping to break through the Nova Corps defenses and rescue them. However, the Nova Corps would not let them succeed so easily. Anticipating this move, the Nova Corps deployed additional troops along the route to intercept them. A fierce stalemate ensued across the battlefield. Weiss rapidly shifted his hands through complex gestures, and mystical rays of light shot out from his fingertips, intertwining and entwining in the air, eventually forming 3 strong magical ropes. Like serpents, these ropes swiftly snaked towards Ebony Maw and the other 2, tightly binding them and preventing them from moving. Weiss had long been fascinated by the anatomy of aliens. After all, the universe was so vast, and life forms on different planets were so diverse. And these invading aliens possessed unique appearances and abilities. This presented a rare opportunity for research. Chapter 266 Research. Soon, under the Nova Corps' methodical and swift attack, the invading force was driven back like a tide. Having already suffered heavy losses in their previous clash with Weiss, and plagued by internal disarray and a lack of unity, the invading army was completely defenseless against the Nova Corps' fierce attack. Weiss breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the Nova Corps had successfully driven the invading army from the planet. He had deliberately provoked this invasion, though his goal was to counter those who coveted the Power Stone. Fortunately, it ultimately resulted in few casualties, a blessing in disguise. He glanced at Ebony Maw, Ronan, Black Dwarf, and Nebula, who had been bound by his magic, and led them back to the Mage Tower. Weiss walked directly into a research room and first placed Nebula roughly on the dissection table. Nebula was filled with fear, her eyes filled with panic. The cyborg body twisted and turned on the dissection table, making a soft metallic clang. However, Weiss didn't consider her feelings. In his eyes, Nebula was just a research subject with a unique anatomy. Weiss reached out and slowly caressed Nebula's body. His fingers gently slid across Nebula's cold skin, sensing no warmth, only the cold, metallic texture of everything he touched. Everywhere he looked, he could see clear marks of modification, some deep, some shallow, as if silently telling of the painful transformation Nebula had endured. He narrowed his eyes slightly as he continued to examine Nebula's internal structure. It was clear that many of her organs had been replaced with various machines. Nebula's anatomy was so unique that she could even be disassembled into a vast collection of parts and still survive. Each component seemed to have a unique function within her body, yet none of them were indispensable. If any part broke, it could simply be replaced with a new one. Theoretically, with such a miraculous body structure, Nebula has practically achieved immortality. This form of existence, characterized by frail flesh and mechanical soaring, is undoubtedly a unique evolutionary path, defying the limitations of conventional biological understandings of life and the body. However, this type of evolution is not what Weiss seeks. In his view, the mysteries of life possess a deeper and more complex essence, one that cannot be fully understood through simple mechanical replacement and splicing. He shook his head gently, then tossed Nebula aside as if it were a disposable item, turning his attention to Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw possessed a peculiar octopus-like face, its features oddly arranged, and its eyes shone with a cunning and profound light. Ebony Maw belonged to a highly evolved cosmic race. Throughout a long history of cosmic evolution, their species had undergone countless transformations and developments, gradually developing a unique and complex life system. They possessed highly developed intelligence and physical abilities far exceeding those of ordinary races. They possessed not only remarkable adaptability but also unique innate abilities, such as Ebony Maw's telekinesis, which allows him to manipulate objects with the power of his mind, unleashing unexpected effects in combat. Weiss stood at the autopsy table, his gaze etched with a fierce thirst for knowledge. The bound Ebony Maw lay there, powerless and unresisting, like a lamb to the slaughter. Weiss slowly reached out, his movements gentle yet unwavering, and gently opened Ebony Maw's strange skull. As the skull opened, the brain within revealed itself. The brain was small, barely the size of a fist, yet it emanated a faint green glow that was eerie in the dimly lit autopsy room. Weiss narrowed his eyes, carefully examining the mysteriously glowing brain, inwardly marveling at the unique structure of the cosmic race. Then, Wes carefully raised his wand. He gently brought it close to Ebony Maw's brain, as if touching a priceless yet fragile treasure. Just as the wand was about to touch the brain, Wes whispered the word, "Analyze." With this whisper, a soft magical light suddenly emanated from the wand, slowly enveloping Ebony Maw's brain and using its magical power to deeply analyze its structure. Wes stared at the scene before him, absorbed in every possible detail. After a long moment, the magical light gradually dimmed, signaling the completion of the brain's analysis. Wes let out a soft breath, a look of satisfaction on his face. Then, With deft movements, he produced a specially made storage container and carefully placed Ebony Maw's brain inside, ensuring it would be properly preserved for further study. As for Ebony Maw, the moment his brain was removed by Wes, his body trembled violently, and he ceased breathing completely. The once formidable figure, whose powerful telekinesis and cunning wisdom had etched the name of the evil Black Tongue across the universe, had now met his end in silence, a victim of Weiss's quest for knowledge. After dealing with Ebony Maw, Weiss's gaze fell upon Ronan, also bound nearby. Ronan, the once awe-inspiring accuser, was a renowned figure throughout the universe. His towering, imposing figure and powerful hammer had instilled fear in countless. Yet, in Weiss's eyes, he was now little more than material for study. Without hesitation, Weiss methodically began his dissection of Ronan, meticulously examining his external anatomy, noting every unique feature. Then, slowly picking up his tools, he delved deeper into the mysteries of his body. After a detailed dissection, Weiss also carefully preserved Ronan's body. In his opinion, the body structures of these people from different cosmic races may provide important clues for him to unlock the mysteries of cosmic life. Chapter 267 Recruitment. Wes turned his gaze to Black Dwarf. Black Dwarf met Wes's gaze. His large, doe-like eyes betrayed no trace of fear, but instead a complex expression, a blend of regret, relief, and a touch of resignation. This mountain-like figure possessed such delicate emotions, a stark contrast to his exaggeratedly large frame and terrifying, ferocious features. It was a jarring scene, full of contradictions and conflicts, yet deeply thought-provoking. Wes couldn't help but frown, filled with curiosity about this massive figure. What kind of life had he experienced to reveal such complex emotions at the moment of death? With this question in mind, Wes decided to use legilimency to delve into Black Dwarf's innermost secrets and access his memories. Instantly, Black Dwarf's life unfolded before Wes like a vivid scroll. In the video, the young Black Dwarf, still a somewhat immature boy, diligently learns how to fight alongside his father on a vast, desolate training ground. His father's towering figure looms large in the sunlight, each movement imbued with power and skill. Black Dwarf emulates his father intently, his eyes filled with admiration for his father and a thirst for the art of combat. However, fate's wheels turn mercilessly. In a brutal battle, his father tragically dies protecting his tribe. In that moment, Black Dwarf feels the pain of his world crumbling, a pain that penetrates deep into his bones, like thousands of steel needles piercing his heart. But he knows he can't wallow in sorrow, he must be strong. Fighting back tears, he takes on his father's role as clan leader. The heavy weight of responsibility weighing on his young shoulders only makes his gaze more resolute. Under Black Dwarf's leadership, his people gradually united. With their tenacious will and exceptional fighting prowess, they carved a niche for themselves in the universe, becoming one of the most powerful mercenaries in the universe. Their name spread across the galaxies, intimidating their enemies and attracting employers. Black Dwarf became a hero to his people, his prestige growing with each passing day. But fate, as always, played a trick on them. Then, the formidable cosmic overlord, Thanos, loomed like a vast shadow, looming over their lives. Thanos' power was overwhelming, his ambition like a cosmic black hole, devouring everything. Black Dwarf and his people were as insignificant as ants before him. For the sake of his people's lives, Black Dwarf had no choice but to obey Thanos' orders and lead his people on a journey to fight for him. From then on, they were plunged into endless war and slaughter. Every battle tormented Black Dwarf, yet he could not escape this cruel fate. The memory continued, ending abruptly when Black Dwarf was captured by Weiss. Weiss shook his head slightly, his lips curling up slightly as he whispered, "Interesting." He rubbed his chin, lost in thought. After a moment, Weiss broke the silence, looking at Black Dwarf again and asking, "How many people are there in your tribe?" Black Dwarf simply lowered his head in silence. The faces of his tribe flashed through his mind, those familiar faces holding the softest place in his heart. From the moment he took up his weapon, he knew that one day he would be killed in this brutal cosmic war. He did not regret anything he had done, for he had been prepared for it, willing to sacrifice everything for his people. Now, his only hope was that, in recognition of his death, Thanos would spare his people, allowing them to continue living in peace in some corner of the universe. After gaining a deeper understanding of Black Dwarf's turbulent and helpless life, Weiss keenly perceived that what Black Dwarf cared most about at this moment was his people. Weiss narrowed his eyes slightly, staring at the silent giant before him, and slowly spoke. Do you think Thanos will spare your people? You're naive. Without your protection, your people will be like lambs without a shield in this cruel universe, becoming mere cannon fodder for those with ulterior motives. At Weiss's words, Black Dwarf's head, which had been lowered, lifted slightly. He no longer remained silent, a complex look flashing in his eyes. He slowly spoke. Thanos promised me that as long as I served him, he would not harm my people. His voice was low and hoarse, though this hope seemed so fragile in the face of such harsh reality. Weiss sneered and retorted, even if he keeps his promise, don't forget how many people you've offended during the long years you've fought for him. Those forces you've harmed won't let your people off easily. Once you're gone, their vengeance will spread like wildfire, devouring your people. Black Dwarf frowned at Weiss's words. He was no fool, and Weiss's reminder immediately dawned on him the gravity of the situation. He knew that without his protection, his people's future would be fraught with peril, like walking on the edge of a thorny cliff. A single misstep could lead to ruin. He raised his head, looked at Weiss with a determined gaze, and asked, what do you want me to do? He knew Weiss must need him, otherwise, with the way Weiss treated Ebony Moore and Ronan, he would have been dissected long ago. Weiss didn't answer, but turned and headed out of the Mage Tower. Seeing this, Black Dwarf hesitated, but followed. The two walked out of the Mage Tower, one after the other. Weiss paused, gestured around, and asked, how's it here? Black Dwarf frowned, surveying the area. It was a space measuring several hundred square kilometers. Black Dwarf shook his head and bluntly commented, it's too small, too fake. His tone was pertinent, without a trace of veiled emotion. Weiss simply nodded, not angry. He explained, this is a space I've opened up. It's only in its infancy. I plan to transform it into a real world, a place brimming with life and vitality. Black Dwarf snorted, dismissive, what a waste of energy. Wouldn't it be possible to just occupy a planet and have everything? Why waste time and resources here? Weiss smiled faintly and said, but this place has one great advantage, safety. No one can enter or leave this space without my permission. In this universe, a safe haven is the most precious thing. Black Dwarf immediately understood Weiss's purpose. He stared at Weiss and said slowly, you want to recruit me? Weiss looked at Black Dwarf, his eyes revealing a sense of confidence. He had expected this reaction from Black Dwarf. He knew that his plan was already halfway successful. Chapter 268 Migration. Although the place is small, it's large enough for you and your people to live here. Weiss's voice echoed in the somewhat empty space, revealing an unquestionable confidence. Black Dwarf's tribe had been devastated by years of constant warfare for Thanos. War, like a merciless meat grinder, had consumed most of its young and middle-aged members. Those once strong and vibrant warriors fell in one brutal battle after another, leaving behind only shattered families. Now, the remaining tribe consisted mostly of the elderly, the weak, and the disabled. The entire tribe's population now numbered no more than 100,000, a figure so small and fragile for a once glorious mercenary group, like a candle flickering in the wind, vulnerable to snuff at any moment. Weiss's proposal stirred Black Dwarf's heart. He longed to find a safe haven for his people, away from the chaos of war and the fear of death. Although this space seemed small and rudimentary at the moment, if it could truly become the tribe's new home, as Weiss had suggested, it would undoubtedly be an extremely tempting option. However, Black Dwarf harbored doubts. He didn't trust Weiss. After all, they had only just met, and they were enemies. Bringing his people here would mean placing the power of their lives in Weiss's hands. How different would this be from what happened under Thanos' control? Under Thanos' control, their survival was temporarily guaranteed, but they were forced into an endless cycle of slaughter, losing their freedom and dignity. Weiss's proposal now seemed like a seemingly beautiful trap. Black Dwarf didn't know what awaited his people if they stepped into it. Yet, he seemed to have no other choice. They had already made countless enemies in this vast universe. Those they had harmed were eyeing them with eagerness, ready to exact revenge upon them. And Thanos' promises were unreliable. If he died, his people would be in dire straits. Black Dwarf was caught in a deep dilemma, hesitant and frowning. Think about it carefully, Weiss said in a calm and composed voice. He knew this decision was too grave for Black Dwarf to be forced. He was willing to give Black Dwarf ample time to weigh the pros and cons. After all, this matter depended on the survival of a race. Every passing second felt like a sharp knife slicing through Black Dwarf's heart. He knew full well that even a second of delay could mean annihilation for his people. Those potential enemies, like hungry wolves lurking in the darkness, could pounce on the unsuspecting people at any moment. He, himself, torn between trust and doubt. His mind flashed back to the suffering faces of his people and the images of those who had lost their lives in battle. After endless struggle, he finally decided to take a gamble. It was a gamble on the future of his entire race and his own life. He took a deep breath, his eyes rekindled with determination. He looked at Weiss and said, "Save my people, and my life is yours." Black Dwarf quickly found Weiss and gave him a coordinate. Weiss's lips curled slightly, sensing Black Dwarf's determination. Without a moment's delay, the two of them sped off in their spaceship toward the coordinates. The ship traced a brilliant arc of light across the universe before performing a space jump. In a flash of light, they arrived at Black Dwarf's homeland. It was a desolate place, with yellow sand billowing through the air, like a forgotten wasteland. A howling wind whipped up dust like a giant yellow dragon, wreaking havoc on this once beautiful land. The sky was stained a dim yellow by the dust, and the sun's rays dimmed, barely filtering through the dust. The earth was dry and cracked, its gaping cracks like wounds, revealing the suffering it had endured. Upon seeing Black Dwarf's return, his people were stunned at first, then burst into tears of joy. The elders' hands trembled, tears of excitement welling in their eyes. Children cheered and gathered around Black Dwarf. The women embraced one another, their long-suppressed emotions unleashed. Weiss didn't have time for them to vent their emotions. He quickly opened a massive portal. On the other side of the portal lay the space Weiss had opened up. Black Dwarf immediately urged his tribe to pack their food, essential for their survival. He also ordered them to discard all unnecessary belongings, pack light, and complete their migration as quickly as possible. His prestige was high among his tribe, and no one disobeyed his orders. They sprang into action, preparing in an orderly and frantic manner. In a frantic and orderly process, within an hour, tens of thousands of people had completed their migration and entered Weiss's space. The arrival of tens of thousands of people was like a surging fountain of life, injecting a surge of life into the once silent space, bringing it to life. The joyful laughter of children filled the air as they ran and played in the open space, their innocent joy seemingly dispelling any gloom. Adults bustled about, curiously surveying their new surroundings, their eyes gleaming with hope. The tribe members were delighted with the environment, especially the clean, clear water. They viewed it as a gift of life. The gurgling stream shimmered in the sunlight, each drop imbued with vitality and energy. After settling the tribe members, Black Dwarf approached Weiss with steady, resolute steps. He knelt solemnly before Weiss, his massive frame brimming with respect. This gesture symbolized his commitment to Weiss, an unconditional offer of loyalty in return for Weiss's rescue. Seeing Black Dwarf kneel, the other tribe members followed suit. Suddenly, tens of thousands of people knelt in unison, a magnificent spectacle. They bowed their heads, filled with deep gratitude for Weiss and offer the future. Weiss, observing this, gently raised his hands. Instantly, a gentle force emanated from his hands, spreading to each of them. Under this force, everyone was slowly lifted to their feet. Weiss looked at them gently, his tone sincere. "I'm not a slave owner. You don't need to do this. Live here peacefully. I won't interfere in your affairs. Black Dwarf is still your leader. You can live your life as you please." Weiss's words were like a reassurance, completely settling the tribe's previously nervous hearts. They looked up at Weiss with a touch of familiarity and trust in their eyes. Black Dwarf glanced at Weiss with gratitude, then turned and led his tribe to select a suitable site and prepare to build their homes. Each of them possessed strength far superior to that of an ordinary person, making the construction work proceed with remarkable speed. Some carried enormous logs, the thick trees feeling like wielding delicate branches in their hands. Others wielded tools, digging the foundations with each stroke precise and powerful. With their concerted efforts, a tribe of tens of thousands began to take shape. Chapter 269 Gap. Tree houses rose from the woods. Though their construction was still crude, their walls simply woven from branches and vines, their roofs covered in a thick layer of leaves, everyone was immersed in joy. For them, this was a new home, a place of hope they had regained after enduring hardships. Every piece of wood and every leaf carried their hopes for a future life. However, a new problem soon arose. As tens of thousands of people began their normal lives in this new space, resources began to be depleted at an alarming rate. Every member of the tribe, from infants to the elderly, from men and women in their prime, needed food to survive. Food reserves, once sufficient to sustain them for a long time, were dwindling at a terrifying rate as tens of thousands of people consumed them like hungry chicks. As Black Dwarf observed all this, a deep worry crossed his stone-like face. "Don't worry. Now that we've taken you in, we won't let you starve to death." Several days passed slowly in the profound silence of the universe. A beautiful, azure planet appeared before their eyes, like a dazzling gem set against the black satin of the universe, emitting a captivating and mysterious light. Wes activated his ship's stealth mode, and like a transparent ghost, it slowly descended toward Earth. Through the porthole, Wes observed the familiar scene below. New York, this bustling metropolis, was as bustling as ever, like a never-ending carnival. Wes made his way unimpeded to the Fisk building. The moment he appeared, the underlings in the building recognized him instantly. They held Wes in awe, not daring to show any slight. They hurriedly surrounded him and respectfully led him to Kingpin's office. Kingpin had been living a truly comfortable and fulfilling life these days, as if fate had blessed him with special favor. Research on the dragon bone progressed smoothly. The mysterious bone seemed to hold countless secrets. Every breakthrough brought him closer to his goal of resurrecting his wife and children, rekindling his intense desire for a family reunion. In the underworld, he rose to prominence. With his ruthless tactics and exceptional leadership, he had conquered the entire New York underworld. Now, his every command carried the weight of an imperial decree, and no one dared to disobey. Financially, after absorbing the vast assets left behind by the vampires, his wealth grew exponentially, increasing several times over. His business empire expanded, and various legal and illegal businesses flourished under his control. At this moment, Kingpin was truly filled with pride and at the pinnacle of his life. However, he knew full well that his achievements were largely due to Wes. When Weiss entered the office, Kingpin immediately rose from his seat, greeted him with a beaming smile, and said warmly, "Mr. Irwin, long time no see." The two exchanged a few pleasantries, asking about each other's recent situation. It seemed casual, but both knew they were about to get down to business. Kingpin smiled and said, "Those vampires are incredibly wealthy. Their wealth is beyond imagination. However, SHIELD also got a share." He then pulled a specially crafted card from his desk drawer and gently pushed it toward Weiss. He continued, "There's $1 billion inside. This is only a portion of our haul, but I promise every penny is traceable. You can use it with confidence. $1 billion, an astronomical figure that would shock anyone. For any individual. No matter where in the world, it's a staggering sum." However, Weiss simply glanced at the card bearing this enormous fortune and pushed it back without hesitation. There was no trace of greed for money in his eyes. The $1 billion was just a figure to him. Weiss asked bluntly, "Are all the things I need ready?" Seeing this, Jinbing nodded quickly and replied, "It didn't cost much. Everything has been prepared according to your requirements and can be delivered to you at any time." There was a hint of relief in his tone. After all, he felt that completing the task Weiss had assigned him had not consumed too much energy or resources. Weiss frowned slightly, then said, "I need your help with something else." Jinbing immediately straightened up and responded respectfully, "Tell me. As long as it's within my ability, I will do it for you." Weiss took a deep breath and slowly stated his request. Jinbing's brows furrowed as he listened, and he said with difficulty, "Supplies for 100,000 people." His heart was filled with a turbulent storm. The scale of this task far exceeded his expectations. This was no simple order. It involved a massive amount of supplies, enough to sustain 100,000 people. It wasn't that King didn't have the ability to prepare these supplies. As the overlord of the New York underworld, he controlled a vast network of resources and theoretically could have assembled them. However, mobilizing resources on such a large scale would inevitably attract attention from all sides. The government, other gangs, law enforcement, and even shadowy organizations might all be aware of this unusual activity. King looked at Weiss with a puzzled expression and couldn't help but ask, "Are you preparing to start a war?" The supplies Weiss requested were diverse, ranging from large quantities of food to feed 100,000 people, seeds for long-term planting, livestock for daily life and production, and even weapons. All of this made King think of war. Even he, known for his ability to influence the world in the New York underworld, felt somewhat overwhelmed by such a difficult situation. Weiss shook his head and said calmly, "I'm just taking in some homeless people." He then briefly recounted his experiences in space. King listened with rapt attention, completely absorbed in Weiss's cosmic tales. Vibrant, Colorful images constantly surfaced in his mind, as if he himself were transported to that mysterious universe. The world outside is so wonderful, he couldn't help but exclaim. Yet, even as he marveled at this, Kingpin felt a profound sense of the gap between himself and Wes. He realized that the world Wes had experienced was vast and wondrous, while he had been confined to the tiny city of New York. Despite his power and wealth in New York, it all seemed so insignificant compared to the vast universe Wes displayed. He began to understand that he and Wes were simply not on the same level, a gap that stretched like an unbridgeable chasm between them. Chapter 270 Current Situation. Weiss wanted to know what major events had occurred during his absence from Earth. While Kingpin didn't fully understand the details behind these events, he had extensive intelligence networks within the New York underworld and was willing to share as much detail as possible. First, there was the disbanding of SYNOPSIS. This news sent shockwaves through the international community. Officials offered no clear reason, simply announcing the decision, leaving countless people shocked and bewildered. However, Kingpin had learned some of the inside story through his own channels. SYLD had been ripped apart by Hydra, who had exploited SYLD's resources and platforms to launch Project Insight. This plan was essentially an act of extreme terrorism, employing advanced technology to carry out large-scale strikes and elimination against those they deemed a threat, with complete disregard for the safety of ordinary people and international order. This deranged move thoroughly enraged nations. After all, no country wanted to see such an uncontrolled and dangerous organization wreak havoc on their territory. Moreover, SYLD's actions in international affairs have long led many countries to believe that it has gradually become a lackey of the United States, losing the impartiality and independence expected of an international security organization. Under immense international pressure, this once powerful organization collapsed. Secondly, superheroes, led by Captain America and Iron Man, formed the Avengers. The formation of the Avengers seemed to bring a glimmer of hope to a world riven by crisis, believing that with such a powerful group of defenders, Earth could be protected from a variety of unknown threats. However, this move also sparked dissenting opinions. After all, superheroes are incredibly powerful, and their very existence is a double-edged sword. They can protect humanity but can also cause devastating harm if unchecked. Third, the increasing frequency of supercriminals, who have caused numerous troublesome incidents, has plunged society into chaos. There are many different theories as to the reasons for this rise in supercriminals. One theory is that the presence of superheroes acts as a magnet, attracting those with similar special abilities but ulterior motives. Seeing the attention and popularity garnered by superheroes, these supercriminals, driven by envy or a thirst for power, began to emulate them, exploiting their abilities for their own selfish ends. This sentiment angered superhero supporters, who argued that superheroes were fighting to protect humanity and should not be held responsible. A fierce public opinion war ensued, with conflicting opinions expressed in the media, online, and even among government officials. Some held superheroes responsible for the emergence of these supercriminals, while others firmly supported them. Amid this chaotic situation, some advocated for all superheroes to reveal their identities, arguing that only by doing so could people avoid panic caused by the fear of the unknown. However, this proposal sparked renewed controversy. Whether superheroes should sacrifice their privacy and safety to satisfy the public's right to know became a central point of debate. Since their inception, the Avengers have unwaveringly committed themselves to the arduous task of eradicating the remnants of Hydra. Hydra, a terrorist organization long lurking in the shadows of history, is like a deeply buried cancer with countless tentacles, its power complex and deeply entrenched. Its members, like cockroaches hiding in dark corners, can be found in every corner of the world, from bustling metropolises to remote villages and even the most mysterious and inaccessible places. The Avengers are well aware of the dangers posed by Hydra, but their lack of law enforcement power presents numerous obstacles in their operations. In the international arena, each country has its own system of law and order, and the Avengers' actions operate outside these rules. While their actions against Hydra on foreign territory are justified from the perspective of maintaining world peace, many countries view them as an infringement of their sovereignty. This has fueled deep resentment against the Avengers in many countries, a resentment that has spread like wildfire internationally. Furthermore, the fact that the majority of the Avengers are American has exacerbated other countries' concerns. In the delicate balance of international politics, this imbalance in nationality led other nations to question whether the Avengers was merely another tool of the United States in international affairs. Governments around the world pressed the U.S. government, and the White House's phones rang almost constantly, urging it to explain and regulate the Avengers' actions. The U.S. government was caught in a dilemma, struggling to address international discontent while also avoiding the loss of the Avengers' powerful force. This situation became a complex and tense dilemma. Iron Man and Captain America, two core figures of the Avengers, also had differing views, a subtle yet profound crack that quietly appeared in the seemingly solid edifice of the Avengers. Iron Man, with his genius and business acumen, preferred to bring the Avengers under a regulatory framework. He understood the potential damage unchecked power could cause, and hoped to alleviate international pressure by collaborating with governments to provide a legal framework for the Avengers' actions. Captain America, a veteran who upheld freedom, justice, and pure moral principles, firmly opposed such regulation. He believed that superheroes' actions should be based on their own judgment of justice, not government directives driven by political interests. Once subject to regulation, they risk losing their autonomy and failing to truly protect those in need. Amidst these conflicting circumstances, the newly formed Avengers were already showing signs of disintegration. Members were, to varying degrees, affected by the differing views of their two leaders, and the internal atmosphere had become delicate and tense. The team, once united against the threat, was now fracturing under the clash of ideologies, like a ship beginning to develop loose planks in a storm. Weiss listened quietly to Kingpin's narration, his mind gauging the current time. He understood that the world was about to erupt in a civil war among superheroes, a war whose scale and impact would far exceed anyone's imagination. This would not be a conflict within the Avengers, as depicted in the movies. The flames would quickly spread, escalating into fierce conflict among superheroes worldwide. The supercriminals lurking in the shadows, like sharks scenting blood, would not miss this golden opportunity to fish in troubled waters. They will take advantage of the chaos to rise up, aggravate the situation and seek their own interests. The world is now like a warehouse full of gunpowder, just waiting for someone to ignite this powder keg that is about to explode. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271. Next stop. New York Harbor, a bustling hub and one of the largest ports on the east coast of the United States, shrouded in darkness, resembled a steel behemoth awakened. The sea shimmered, the traces of a dozen large cruise ships slicing through the water as they slowly approached the harbor. At the harbor's edge, Wes stood quietly, his gaze fixed on the approaching ships, a hint of anticipation in his eyes. Kingpin stood respectfully beside him, not willing to slack off on Wes's behalf. As the cruise ship's bow landed steadily at the dock, Kingpin immediately ordered his men to unload the cargo. No need, Wes suddenly intervened. A spatial portal slowly opened in the air. With a gentle surge of energy, Black Dwarf emerged from the portal, accompanied by hundreds of young men. Each of these men was enormous, over 5 meters tall, their burly figures bulging with muscle and defined by distinct lines. Their faces were hideous, some sporting sharp horns, others with eyes as large as bells, gleaming with an eerie light, their skin covered in strange patterns. This sudden sight terrified Kingpin's men. Many of them felt their legs tremble uncontrollably, their grip on their tightly held guns unsteady, their eyes filled with terror. "What are you afraid of? It's not like we've never seen aliens before," Kingpin shouted. His voice, like thunder, reverberated through the men's ears, calming them down slightly. Although these men had seen their fair share of the New York underworld, facing these alien creatures so closely was a terrifying experience. The young men brought by Black Dwarf didn't hesitate. They approached the cruise ship, each effortlessly shouldering a container and heading back. Throughout, they performed their task silently, their coordinated movements and immense strength astonishing. However, the sheer volume of supplies was overwhelming, and despite the impressive strength of these young men, they still struggled. Just then, some underage alien children emerged from the space tunnel to help. Though children, they were each over 3 meters tall, significantly larger than an adult on Earth. Working in pairs, they lifted each container. By then, with everyone's concerted efforts, the cargo from over a dozen cruise ships had been unloaded before dawn. Weiss watched the last container pass through the space tunnel before it slowly closed. Kingpin gazed at the point where the tunnel disappeared, filled with curiosity about the world beyond. Various speculations raced through his mind, wondering what it would be like there. Weiss, however, was extremely pleased with his haul. With this shipment, he had temporarily solved the Black Dwarf's food problem. It contained not only a large amount of food, but also a variety of livestock and seeds. Still no news from the other clans. To Weiss, vampires were more than just ordinary supernatural beings, they were the perfect material for refining the Philosopher's Stone. We've tracked them down to a small European country, but we don't know their exact location yet. Kingpin shook his head helplessly. He had already mobilized his extensive intelligence network within the underground world, but these vampires were far too cunning, disappearing without a trace the moment they sensed danger. Not only Kingpin, but even the Hand was now working tirelessly to locate the vampires for Weiss. However, the demise of the New York and British clans had frightened the other vampire clans, causing them to become more cautious and hide even deeper. The slightest clues that might have once revealed their whereabouts had been meticulously erased, as if they had never existed. Weiss sighed with regret, but he wasn't disappointed. The remaining Philosopher's Stones could hold out for a while longer. These vampires couldn't remain hidden forever. As long as they operated in this world, they would eventually reveal themselves. Perhaps a careless incident of blood-sucking, perhaps a member's negligence, these tiny flaws could provide Weiss with a way to find them. Then, he would strike again. Weiss now possesses 3 Infinity Stones, making him one of the most threatening figures in the universe and a thorn in Thanos' side. Thanos is hell-bent on collecting all 6 Infinity Stones and establishing his own path to balance the universe. He will tolerate no interference in his plans, especially from Weiss, who already possesses half of the Infinity Stones. Furthermore, Weiss is determined to seize the remaining 3. Thanos' snap of his fingers, wiping out half of all life in the universe after gathering all 6 Infinity Stones, might seem like fate to many, an inevitable consequence of the universe's development. But for Weiss, none of that matters. He is a time traveler, a special being from another time and space. If, after possessing the seemingly inexplicable ability to travel, he still has to rely on the opinions of others and be bound by so-called fate and inevitability, wouldn't his journey to this world be meaningless? But before that, he must continuously improve his abilities. The universe is like a turbulent, dark ocean, and the Infinity Stones are the brightest yet most dangerous pearls within its depths. Possessing them is like standing at the center of a raging storm, vulnerable to being devoured at any moment. The 3 Infinity Stones in Weiss's possession are both powerful aids and beacons inviting disaster. Thanos will show no mercy. That final titan, obsessed with his so-called balance in the universe, will stop at nothing to achieve his goal. Countless planets have been reduced to ruins under his iron yoke, and countless lives have been wiped out in his sight like ants. Weiss, the stumbling block in his quest for the Infinity Stones, will be crushed with unstoppable force. He will not be swayed by Weiss's excuses, nor will he show the slightest mercy. Furthermore, it is Death who is tempting Thanos to gather the Infinity Stones. Behind the scenes of this universe, Death is an invisible, dark hand, manipulating everything. This has driven Thanos into a frenzied pursuit. Her very presence complicates and perils the situation. It's time to recruit more people. Chapter 272 Arrival. Kill them all. A roar echoed like thunder across the calm sea as a shabby yet fierce pirate ship slammed into the unsuspecting merchant ship. Like demons surging from hell, a group of ferocious pirates leaped onto the merchant ship, shouting and clamoring. Their brandished swords gleamed with a blinding cold light in the sunlight. Ha ha ha, the leader, a massive figure, towered 3 meters tall like a moving iron tower. His exposed upper body bulged with muscles, veins protruding like the tangled roots of an old tree. A hideous scar, slicing diagonally from his forehead to his chin like a serpentine centipede, added to his already ferocious features. Men, take back all the valuables. Yes, Captain, dozens of ferocious pirates shouted in unison, their voices filled with greed and fanaticism. They surged aboard the merchant ships like a surging tide, their eyes gleaming with a lust for wealth and violence. These pirates, clad in a motley array of tattered clothing, emanated a stench of sweat and blood. Yet, their weapons were polished to a gleaming shine, each one soaked in the blood of innocent victims. They rampaged through the merchant ships, unfettered. Encountering those who dared resist, the pirates unhesitatingly raised their swords and slashed them fiercely. Blood splattered, Screams echoed. Some of the resisting crew members had their throats slashed, blood gushing out like fountains, instantly staining the decks red. Others, stabbed through the chest, eyes filled with resentment and despair as they slowly collapsed. The unarmed passengers were utterly terrified, fleeing in every direction, with nowhere to hide. Women became the prey. Like hungry wolves, the pirates seized upon the vulnerable women, ignoring their pleas and struggles, and committed their brutality before the eyes of the public. Their cries for help sounded faint in the chaos, yet incredibly tragic. The merchant ship's guards were no match for these vicious pirates. Though they fought desperately, the disparity in strength was too great. Screams echoed across the merchant ship. Ha! The pirates' wild laughter filled the blood-soaked air, reveling in the thrill of slaughter and plunder. That way, my bounty will exceed 10 million, the pirate captain stood at the bow, gazing at the bloody scene before him, his eyes gleaming with excitement. He could already see his name rising high on the wanted poster, the bounty number magnifying in his mind. He began to imagine the glorious scene of entering the Grand Line and venturing into a new world. In his imagination, he was like an invincible god of war, riding the waves of the Grand Line, crushing every enemy he encountered. In his eyes, the so-called four emperors were nothing more than lambs to the slaughter. He imagined himself clashing face to face with the admirals, easily crushing them. The pirate king must be mine. He brandished his massive machete and roared to the heavens, his voice filled with an absolute thirst for power, wealth, and fame. Huh? What's that? Hass's large, bill-like eyes flickered with suspicion. He pointed a gnarled finger at the sky, his thick neck straining upward. He saw a tiny golden speck in the sky, gleaming against the azure sky like a fragment of debris from the sun. As time went by, the golden speck grew larger. What is that? How is it flying in the sky? Hassa frowned, the wrinkles on his rough face deepening. He was an uneducated pirate, a life of plundering at sea, his knowledge pitifully limited. In his limited understanding, the sea was only for ships, and the sky was the domain of birds and clouds. The flying object before him was beyond his comprehension. He had never even heard of a spaceship. It seems to be getting closer. The other pirates around him also spotted the unidentified golden object, halting their actions and looking up at the sky. Their eyes were filled with curiosity and a hint of unease. These pirates, usually focused on looting, instinctively feared novelty. As the spaceship approached, the pirates could clearly see that this strange object was 10 times larger than their own ship. Its golden hull shone with a luxurious and mysterious glow in the sunlight, its streamlined shape engraved with intricate and exquisite patterns. Captain, the ordinary pirates began to panic, their voices filled with unmistakable fear. I'm Hassa the Wild Bear, with a bounty of 8 million berries. They tried to use their reputation to dispel their fear. He yanked the massive machete from his waist and raised it high, his arm muscles bulging with effort, veins tangling like vines. He slashed at the ship, intent on cleaving the object that troubled him. However, before his machete could even touch the ship, its automatic defenses activated. A laser beam emanated from a device aboard, swift and impassive. It pierced Hass's heart, instantly leaving a charred hole in his broad chest. Hass's eyes widened in shock and disbelief as he collapsed to the ground, motionless. Blood slowly flowed from his wound, pooling in a dark red pool on the deck. Captain, the pirates cried out in terror, their fear flooding their hearts as they gazed at the fallen captain. Already panicked, they were now even more bewildered. Completely lost, they could only stare blankly at the massive, mysterious golden ship as its hatch slowly opened. Looking at the pirates before him, Weiss's eyes flashed with disdain. He didn't bother to waste time talking to them. In his eyes, these pirates were nothing more than a bunch of evildoers. In just a few seconds, dozens of pirates vanished, and the once bustling and bloody merchant ship fell silent. Only their clothing and weapons remained, scattered haphazardly on the ground. And in Weiss's hand, a red gem appeared. Chapter 273 Big News. But the scene was too horrifying, like a nightmare from hell played out in reality. The pirates disintegrated in the blink of an eye, leaving only their clothing and weapons, as if they had never existed. This horrific scene also terrified the crew aboard the merchant ship. Their eyes were filled with fear and awe, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Facing Weiss, this mysterious figure who resembled both the Grim Reaper and the Savior, no one dared to take a step forward. They simply watched him from afar, breathless. "Who's the captain?" Weiss asked, and everyone's heart trembled. After a brief silence, the captain, demonstrating his responsibility, took a deep breath, suppressed his fear, and stepped out of the crowd. "I am. What can I do for you?" The captain's voice trembled slightly, but remained calm. Weiss nodded slightly and then asked the captain a few common-sense questions, such as what time it was and whether any major events had occurred recently. The captain answered each one truthfully. After asking the question, Weiss said nothing more. As Weiss entered the spaceship, it soared into the sky like a shooting star. Watching the soaring ship, everyone on the merchant ship breathed a sigh of relief, as if awakened from a nightmare. They exchanged glances, their eyes still etched with fear. However, no one noticed as a man in the crowd quietly put away his camera. The next day, the newsbird delivered the World Economic Report to the world. This time, the front page featured a surprising headline. The news on the front page wasn't about the Navy or the four emperors, nor was it about the complex political situation of the world government. Mysterious visitors from outer space, aliens really exist. A large, eye-catching headline dominated the entire page, accompanied by a photo of Weiss. The photo showed Weiss standing before the spaceship, his eyes stern, his windbreaker fluttering in the wind, and the golden spaceship itself. "What nonsense is the World Economic Times spouting? How could there be aliens?" An old pirate spat disdainfully, his face etched with disbelief. He knew all sorts of strange things happened on the sea, but the idea of aliens was simply absurd. "That Birdman Morgans is fabricating fake news again." In this world dominated by oceans and islands, people tend to believe what they see with their own eyes. Most people dismissed such news as a silly joke, purely for amusement. However, the report caught the attention of some. For example, in the New World's Wonguo, Big Mom ruled a land brimming with fantasy and a variety of strange races. Big Mom was sitting at her enormous dining table, enjoying a delicious meal. When she saw the news in the newspaper, her eyes suddenly gleamed with excitement. Her massive frame jolted, and she barked out an order, "Find this man. I want to collect him." Big Mom had always had a penchant for collecting strange races. In her eyes, this so-called alien Weiss was a priceless collectible, and she couldn't wait to add him to her collection. As soon as Big Mom's order was issued, the vast and complex intelligence network of the 10,000 nations sprang into action like a precision machine. Separately, at the center of world power, the five elders gathered. "What do you think of this?" Nasujiro-sama spoke first. His wrinkled face was expressionless, only his eyes gleamed sharply in the light. "It's nothing but hearsay." Peter-sama always scoffed at such news, believing it to be a fabricated gimmick by Morgans to boost newspaper sales. "That aircraft in the photo is very interesting." Satan-sama stared at the photo in the newspaper, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. In this world, he considered himself familiar with all sorts of advanced technology, but this golden aircraft felt unfamiliar to him. "Leave it to the CP, and have them find him," suggested Saint Vocali. As the world government's secret intelligence and assassination organization, the CP possessed formidable capabilities and extensive intelligence networks. Agreed. Amidst the boundless skies, a massive airship loomed, the headquarters of the World Economic News. Like a mysterious island adrift in a sea of clouds, it soared endlessly high in the sky year-round. Emblazoned with the World Economic News's striking logo, it was engraved. Complex mechanical structures and propulsion systems surrounded the craft, enabling it to navigate the airstream with unwavering stability, maintaining its unique maneuverability. It was precisely because of this unparalleled concealment and maneuverability that Morgans repeatedly evaded assassinations and trouble. The world government, long displeased with his bold reports, had repeatedly sent agents to silence him, but each attempt was unsuccessful. Those who coveted the World Economic News influence also attempted to gain control through illegal means, but faced with erratic airships drifting through the sky, they could only sigh in despair. Inside the airship, Morgan sat in his spacious, though slightly cluttered, office. Documents and materials piled higher on his desk, and the walls were covered with the major news reports and photos of prominent figures from the One Piece world. "Boss, my office is overflowing with complaints. Everyone says we're talking nonsense, and some are questioning our credibility," a bespectacled, slightly anxious subordinate said, entering the office with a large pile of mail. His brow furrowed, and he looked at Morgans with resignation. The complaints were already overwhelming him. Morgan simply raised his head slightly and let out a deep laugh. "Don't worry about them. The most important thing now is finding that alien." His tone was firm and unwavering, unconcerned with the complaints. For him, nothing was more important than uncovering this world-shaking news. "President, how can you be sure he's an alien?" Perhaps he's just a person with special abilities, the subordinate asked, bewildered, putting down the letter. He felt it was too hasty to conclude he was an alien based on a single photo. After all, in the world of One Piece, filled with bizarre people and events, those with extraordinary abilities abounded. Ha ha ha, of course it's my intuition. Morgans abruptly stood up, spreading his wings. My intuition has never been wrong. I've uncovered so many breaking news stories largely thanks to this keen intuition. His eyes gleamed with a frenzy, like a determined hunter, locked onto their prey. Where are you exactly? I really want to interview you in person. Morgans walked to the window, gazing out at the endless sky, anticipating his encounter with Weiss. Chapter 274 Landing on the Island. Weiss frowned slightly as he held the World Economic Times in his hand. He studied his own photo in the newspaper carefully, unable to understand why he hadn't even noticed anyone was taking photos. Finally, I've seen how amazing the One Piece reporters are. They can take photos of anything. Weiss couldn't help but sigh. Could it be that the photographer has ingested the photographer fruit? The thought even struck him as a bit amusing. In this world of all sorts of strange devil fruit users, anything seemed possible. However, he only briefly considered the matter and quickly let it go. He was currently on Monty Island. Monty Island was renowned worldwide, especially for wine lovers, a veritable paradise. The island was renowned for its winemaking, producing premium wines with a rich, full-bodied flavor and a rich aroma. Its unique flavor made it worthy of being on the tables of celestial dragons. For this reason, Monty Island attracted countless tourists from around the world. These tourists were a diverse bunch. Elegant, richly dressed nobles, accompanied by their retainers, strolled the island with pride, selecting the finest wines to bring back to their territories. Savvy merchants crisscrossed the wineries, seeking opportunities to sell Monty Island's fine wines further afield and reap enormous profits. Of course, there were also numerous pirates among them. Some came for the fine wines, longing to soothe their weary spirits after long sea voyages. Others, with ulterior motives, sought to profit from this bustling island. To maintain order on Monty Island, the 333rd Marine Branch was stationed there. Dozens of warships were docked at the naval base, neatly arrayed in the harbor. Equipped with advanced weaponry and well-trained sailors, ordinary pirates would simply avoid these waters, shunning them at the mere sight of the iconic naval flag. The entire island of Monty is permeated with the enchanting aroma of wine, its fragrance weaving like invisible threads through every inch of the air. Taverns and izakayas are ubiquitous, each boasting its own unique signature drink. Entering one, a diverse blend of aromas greets you, the rich, fruity aroma of cider, the rich, malty flavor of beer, and the mysterious, alluring fragrance of long-aged wine. These aromas blend together, creating a wondrous olfactory symphony that captivates everyone who visits the island. Weiss pushed open the tavern's aged, yet textured, wooden door, and was greeted by a vibrant atmosphere of wine, tobacco, and the sounds of laughter. He found an empty seat and said to the bartender, "Give me a glass of your specialty." A seasoned veteran, he deftly took a clean glass and steadily poured it from the barrel. The wine swirled in the glass, creating a fine, frothy foam that shimmered captivatingly under the light. Wes picked up the glass and took a gentle sip. The moment the wine entered his mouth, the rich flavors exploded like fireworks on his taste buds. A rich, mellow flavor permeated his mouth, a blend of sweet and sour fruit, fragrant grains, and a unique hint of spices. The flavors blended perfectly, causing him to nod slightly. Not bad. This glass of wine opened the door to his desire to taste fine wine. So, glass after glass of different kinds of wine was brought to him. Wes tasted each one, from the rich, fruity wine to the mellow, malty beer to the complex, flavorful wine. After tasting more than a dozen varieties, he was surprised to find that none of the wines here disappointed him. Each one had a unique flavor and taste. "Give me 100 barrels of all the wines." Upon hearing this, the tavern owner's face suddenly beamed. He walked quickly up to Wes and said with a broad smile, "Sir, you've got great foresight. Don't worry, we'll get it ready for you right away." Wes had cleared out the liquor from several nearby taverns, and the entire island knew a wealthy man had arrived. Several pirate gangs were skeptically watching Wes, their eyes gleaming with greed, like hungry jackals spotting juicy prey. "This kid's got a lot of money. Wait until he leaves the island and then we'll strike," a pirate leader with a ferocious look and a fierce face whispered. His rough hands tightly gripped the hilt of his sword at his waist, as if he couldn't wait to rob Wes of his treasure. Follow him and see where his ship is, another pirate echoed, his eyes never leaving Wes's figure. With all those barrels of liquor, he must have a large ship. Maybe there's even more treasure on board. They secretly calculated the fortune they would reap if the heist was successful, and already imagined themselves living a life of luxury. However, Weiss's next move took them by surprise. With a simple wave of his hand, a strange ripple suddenly rippled through the air, and a dimensional passage radiating a mysterious light appeared out of thin air. As those around him watched in astonishment, the barrels of wine, as if drawn by an invisible hand, flew into the passage one by one in an orderly fashion. This miraculous sight made everyone present stare wide-eyed, their jaws nearly dropping. "It's a Esper!" someone cried out in horror. The pirates naturally assumed Weiss was a devil fruit user. In the North Sea, Esper users were relatively rare. The pirates began to hesitate, their initially high enthusiasm for plundering suddenly dampened like a bucket of cold water. "Esper users are not something we can afford to provoke," one pirate whispered, his voice tinged with unmistakable fear. The other pirates nodded, their greed gradually replaced by fear. They began to retreat quietly. But some pirates were unwilling to give up. They lingered in the distance, observing Weiss's every move, debating whether to proceed with their robbery plan. Weiss had long been aware of the pirates' malicious gazes, but he ignored them. If these pirates had the courage to attack, they would become the material for the Philosopher's Stone. Chapter 275 Red Heart. "Boss, are we really going to do it? That guy has a special ability." A thin pirate trembled as he tugged at the captain's shirt. His eyes were wide with fear, and beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. A group of pirates were stealthily following Weiss. They took cautious steps, trying not to make any noise. Each of them was tense, their muscles tense, their hands tightly gripping their weapons. "What's there to be afraid of? It's just a special ability user. We'll be rich if we kill him," the pirate captain said fiercely, gritting his teeth. His eyes gleamed with a glint of near-insane greed, burning away any remaining shreds of rationality. Weiss approached the shore slowly, and the spaceship slowly descended from the sky. The pirates were stunned, their eyes wide as bells, their mouths gaping wide enough to fit a fist. These inexperienced pirates had never imagined that something so large could fly in the sky. It was completely beyond their comprehension. "I remember. He's the alien mentioned in the World Economic Report," a pirate suddenly shouted, his voice shrill with fear. People are always afraid of the unknown. Some pirates' legs began to tremble uncontrollably, and they instinctively took a few steps back, their eyes filled with a desire to escape. "Don't leave," the captain roared, his face contorted with anger. He suddenly drew the long sword from his waist, raised it high, and swung it with force. A flash of cold light flashed, and a thick tree nearby snapped with a sound. Under his fierce gaze, the pirates dared not retreat. They bravely advanced towards Weiss, step by step, surrounding him. "Hey, hand over the treasure and I'll spare your life," the captain shouted at the top of his voice full of bravado. However, Weiss simply glanced at him indifferently, like an adult looking at an unreasonable child. Weiss ignored these foolish pirates. A red light enveloped them all. Their bodies began to disintegrate. Soon, they were transformed into the Philosopher's Stone. Weiss's slender fingers gently played with a red stone in his hand. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze darting towards the lush forest nearby. His voice was low and magnetic. "You've been following me for so long, and you still haven't come out." There was no trace of surprise in his tone. A rustling sound filled the woods, the leaves rustling. 3 men and a bear slowly emerged from the trees. The one in front stood out. He carried a 3-meter-long sword on his shoulder. He wore a plush hat, the furry texture of which looked very warm. Beneath the hat, a well-defined face, a small, delicate beard, and heavy dark circles under his eyes. Beside him was a silly, goofy white bear, its snow-white fur as pure as the first snow of winter. Weiss instantly recognized them as the Heart Pirates. Their leader was none other than Trafalgar D. Vatiro. They hadn't yet entered the Grand Line, and their bounty was a mere 40 million berries. As soon as they appeared, they immediately adopted a cautious, defensive stance. Bebo, in particular, saw its already round eyes widen even wider when Weiss's gaze fell on it, filled with fear. Like a frightened child, it ducked behind Law, its massive body huddling in an effort to conceal itself. However, its conspicuous white fur and immense size proved too much for Law's modest frame to completely conceal. "When did you find out?" Law's voice was low and raspy, his gaze fixed on Weiss. His face didn't betray excessive fear, but the slightly clenched fists and tense muscles betrayed his inner nervousness. From the very beginning, his gaze roamed unscrupulously over law. In truth, he was deeply interested in law. More precisely, he was intrigued by the power of the opera fruit. Law's perceptions were exceptionally sharp. Under Weiss's visceral gaze, he felt as if he were standing naked in the snow. The frigid air around him cut his skin like sharp ice blades, and Weiss stared at him intently like a ferocious beast. This feeling sent a chill down his spine, and cold sweat instantly broke out from his forehead, streaming down his cheeks, quickly soaking his clothes. He lashed out the sword from his waist, pointing it directly at Weiss, his knuckles white from the force of his grip. This guy is terrifying. Law's heart sank inwardly, knowing that this seemingly ordinary man before him was undoubtedly a dangerous being. If you want to attack me, I'll show you the power of the opera fruit. Weiss remained calm and composed, not regarding the heart pirates as a threat. Yet, at this moment, Law felt as if he were carrying a heavy burden. He felt an endless pressure washing over him like a surging tide. This pressure didn't stem from external pressure, but rather from a deep, clear understanding of the disparity in strength between them. He keenly sensed that the mysterious man before him was like an unreachable, towering mountain, while he himself was as insignificant as an ant before him. Law took a deep breath and shouted, unleashing the power of the surgery fruit. A hemispherical space centered around him emerged. This space felt like a self-contained world, and everything within it was under his control. He was the master of this world. Law swiftly drew the long sword from his waist and shouted, "Cut!" As he spoke, a flash of cold light flashed within the hemispherical space, the force generated by Law's sword swing, slashing straight at Weiss. This strike condensed Law's full strength, and he anticipated the side of his enemy being cut in two. However, to Law's astonishment, Weiss remained unharmed, his body intact, showing no signs of being cut. It was as if Law's fierce attack had just passed by like a breeze, causing no real damage to Weiss. Weiss had simply used his magic to form an invisible shield around his body, easily blocking Law's slash. Too weak, Weiss frowned slightly, a hint of disappointment in his tone. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.